Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Poway Unified Board of Education. It is September 14th, 2017. Welcome. And the time, it is 6:03. And for item 3.1, our report out of closed session. Dr. Patel.
Good evening. You want to redo it? Okay. Closed session began at 4:40 p.m. And for the items on the agenda of closed session, matter item 2.3a, in the matter of public employment, discipline, dismissal, release, on a motion by Zane, second by Beatty, the board voted to impose a 2-day suspension without pay for a classified employee, and the vote of the board was unanimous. All other items, there was nothing to report, and closed session adjourned at 5:45 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. And some of you may have noticed this is our first month actually using the new agenda format, and I forgot the Pledge of Allegiance. So I would ask everyone to please stand. I invite you to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sorry for that oversight. At this time, 3.2, I note all members are in attendance, including our student board member, Ms. Mishra, and for the welcome of the public, Ms. Mishra.
Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Board of Education. If you would like to address the board on any agenda item, please complete a speaker slip. All requests to speak must be submitted to the clerk of the board before the agenda item comes up. If you are requesting an agenda item to be pulled for public discussion from Section 5, Consent Calendar, a speaker slip must be submitted to the clerk now, as approval of the consent calendar is one of the first items up for approval. Item 4.2 is placed on our agenda to enable members of our community to bring items that are not placed anywhere else on the agenda to the board's attention. Speaking time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, with a maximum of 15 minutes per topic, unless waived by the board president. There will be a 30-second yellow light warning when time is running out. Speakers may only speak on one topic under item 4.2 and may not defer their speaking time to another individual. If there are concerns regarding specific individuals, it is preferred that the speaker refrain from naming them publicly to respect their privacy. The board will accept and review any written materials that would provide more specific information. The Brown Act does not permit board action or extended discussion of any item not on the agenda, but your concerns will be referred to staff. With that said, welcome and thank you for coming.
All right, thank you. This takes us to item 3.4, which is our approval of our agenda sequence. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
On a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Ms. Beatty. Any discussion on this item? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. This takes us to our oral presentation section, the 4.0s, and for our first, it is our student board representative reports. And you'll note that we have 3 student board members here tonight instead of all 6. Next month, the other 3 will be here, and we'll miss you guys, but we'll see you the month after that. So welcome, and I'll start with Aaliyah Gardina from Mount Carmel High School. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, Board of Trustees. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today, and I am so excited to tell you about all the amazing things happening at Mount Carmel. To kick off the year, 2 news crews arrived bright and early on the first day of school to observe the Sun Devil Way in effect. They reported on our traditions of welcoming freshmen onto campus with a tunnel made of staff, students, and link crew. Speaking of traditions, in preparation for the first home game, Mount Carmel handed out free Readout t-shirts to every student and staff on campus. This is something we do in order to ensure that every student feels a part of the MC community. Another tradition at the Mount is every year at the first home game, freshmen get in for free with their link crew leaders. As the reigning CIF champions, the Red Sea entered by running into our football field with over 1,000 students. This is our largest attendance yet. To encourage participation, ASB facilitates free face painting and Readout contests. Last Friday, 18 classes were counted as 100% red. With the amazing spirit at Mount Carmel, everybody can see why it's great to be a Sun Devil.
Good, and I saw the video of that first day tunnel. That was really cool. Love the video. All right, thank you. From Del Norte, Nicole Labrador. Sorry,
Good evening, board members. It is an honor to report on the events of the Nest tonight as we grow to become more college-ready, future-focused, and globally aware. College-ready. Seniors are preparing for college applications by getting letters of recommendations from some of their favorite teachers. Our counselors are also preparing to host information nights, presentations, and workshops to help us through this stressful and frightening process. Future-focused. On our first day of school, our amazing Link Crew leaders welcomed over 600 freshmen at orientation. The new Nighthawks had a blast getting to know their class and making some upperclassmen friends. We then held our first day of school assembly where we welcomed all of our students back for the 2017 to 2018 school year with performances from band, cheer, and dance. The Nighthawks are excited for the fresh new start the new year brings. Our back-to-school night took place on Tuesday, and we warmly welcomed all of the parents into the Nest to meet our staff and share what we would be learning about this upcoming year. Our fall season of sports has also started, and we are excited to cheer on our teams as they show us what they have been working hard for all summer. Globally aware. Responding to all those affected by Hurricane Harvey, Del Norte worked with the FFCC club and organization to help provide relief. We encouraged each student to give a high five to Houston and donate $5. Within days, we successfully raised over $5,000 to help the victims of the disaster. Last Friday, we recognized the courageous hearts of those who have served our country at Military Night. We held a ceremony at our football game, and our flock decked out in red, white, and blue. On 9/11, our Key Club placed 2,996 American flags around campus, one to represent each life lost in the attack, to recognize those who sacrificed their lives for our country. This week, we held our first day of Club Rush, where a portion of the 100 clubs on campus set up tables in the quad and shared about their clubs, getting new Nighthawks to join and become involved on campus. ASB has been hard at work to start the year off strong. We held a pump-up palooza at lunch before our first football game of the season and made blue and green balloon animals, gave out beads and tattoos, and had hula hoop competitions to get everyone excited and ready for the game. Currently, we are getting ready for homecoming, Red Ribbon Week, and pep rallies. Tomorrow, we will announce our homecoming theme of All Around the World, and we will continue to encourage participation and spirit among our students. We love our family we call the flock. Thank you.
And I was on your campus yesterday and saw the new Nighthawk wings that are being painted on the wall. Really cool. You guys are doing great stuff. All right. From Abraxas High School, Olivia Hampton. Welcome. First time, right?
Hi. Thank you for having me here. I am, of course, a senior at Abraxas High School, a small alternative high school which is comprised of two programs, our diploma program and our transition program. And because we have two programs, we will be having two back-to-school nights, one of which is tonight for the transition program, and one is October 18th for our diploma program, which I am a part of. Our diploma program is for students who feel that they didn't fit properly into traditional high school, and so of course we have non-traditional classes, such as our leadership class, which helps to organize charity events like our recent endeavors at Brookfield Low-Income Senior Housing, where we recently had a barbecue and also an ice cream bingo social. And then we also have our expository writing class, where we had anti-bullying presentations presented to our student board, where we recommended ideas to revamp and enhance our anti-bullying program and to make it something that all students do believe in. And then we have our transition program, where we have young adults with disabilities, ages 18 to 22, and help them to learn important life skills like cooking, grocery shopping, and to use public transportation. And recently they started their volunteer jobs at places such as elementary schools, charities like the Salvation Army, and rec centers all over Poway and San Diego. And soon they will be starting their for-profit jobs at places like Carl's Jr. And coming up in the transition program, we have a newsletter that they're creating called the Transition Times that will be both student and teacher made. And in the upcoming Jack Go Smash Fun Run, the transition program will be both beneficiaries and participants. As far as overlap in our programs, we have our student garden, where we grow both county and state quality approved produce, where we have recently donated 2,278 pounds of produce to the FFC and the community. And in our garden, we also host our aquaponics class, which is where we use hydroponics to grow fish culture. And we have successfully raised 2 generations of our own Abraxas tilapia, over 150 fish from a 5-fish sample. While Abraxas is mostly known for our credit recovery, our mission is both to help our students and community to flourish to the best of our abilities. While we might not be traditional, we hold value to our originality because we know that our differences is what brings us together. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you all very much, and if you'd like to stay, you're more than welcome. If you need to get and do some homework or whatever it is, you're welcome to go do that at this time as well. So thank you very much for being here. See you in a couple months. This brings us to item 4.2, which is our public comments. And for this, I'll turn it over to Clerk Patel.
Yes, we do have some public comments for tonight. The first up is Ying Tao.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Ying Tao, and I'm a mother of 2 PUSD students, and we are always proud of being part of the PUSD school district. However, most of my friends who are also PUSD parents and I express concern about increase of using educational technology in Dr. Kim Phelps' recent open letters to the district. We are not against the implementation of the technology, but we believe excessive use of education device will bring more side effects, and we believe there are many other better ways to make the education success. There are reasons why our kids need to go to school. We want them to acquire knowledge, follow instructions, cultivate personality, and make friends. Most importantly, we want them to learn social behaviors and be able to interact with other people. School is a perfect place to demonstrate and develop these skill sets. Behavior researchers found interacting with peers is crucial for young people. No matter entertaining each other or having conflicts, kids form the concepts of rules and get a sense of acceptable behaviors. They adjust their behaviors to gain attention and feel being accepted by the group. However, I did not see using digital device in education could promote interaction and emotional stability in school, especially for younger kids. What I notice is kids are spending more and more time with digital devices with less and less interaction in person, which will also lead to visual problems and health issues. Alternatively, in elementary school education, I would like to see more arts and PE programs or second language classes are launched instead of allocating our limited resource to more digital learning programs. Online courses or apps could be beneficial if kids could not present in classroom or instructors have to teach remotely. But since we have all kids sitting in the classroom and we have our teachers available in each class, why do we still require our teachers, students, families to put extra efforts for things not as effective as people expected? As a result, I urge the district to leave the decision to the families in terms of participating in education technology and offering paper-based textbook and curriculum to students as a stand option. Thank you.
Next is Yang Yu.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yang. I live in Forest Ranch. As a mother of two kids, one is a 6-year-old boy, the other is an 11-year-old girl, I'm strongly against totally using educational technology to replace traditional paper and a book to teach. First of all, kids of younger age are still in the age of eyesight development, and using electronic device too much will harm their eyesight. It is well known that electronic devices such as computers and tablets will cause dry eye syndrome and digital eye strain. Most people are aware that ultraviolet or UV light is harmful to the eye and may contribute to the development of cataracts and other eye diseases. Video display terminals such as computer monitors, tablets, and smartphones are one major sources of UV light besides sunlight. Every day we are protecting our kids from UV light by using sunscreen and sunglasses. Why don't we protect the kids from those harmful light by limiting their usage of computers and tablets from the classroom? If our teaching method is solely relying on educational technology, our kids will be exposed to those harmful light all day. Secondly, kids of younger age are not good at self-control. To them, electronic devices are more of a gaming device than a learning tool. When we visit our pediatrician's office, we can always see signs such as limiting your kids' screen time to no more than 2 hours a day. This is because too much screen time can severely affect the kids' ability to focus on tasks and brain development. If we use educational technology as the major learning tool, electronic devices can be easily accessed in school and after school. Kids who are not good at self-control, I think most kids are, especially younger kids, may spend their recess time and lunch time playing games, watching online contents. So that means educational technology may have side effects of significantly affecting kids' brain development without strict device management. Finally, I have to say that using educational technology in teaching and learning doesn't necessarily mean saving money or high efficiency. I agree there are huge amount of learning materials online for kids to explore and learn, but that requires...
You're out of time, I'm sorry. Sorry. Just to remind everyone, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. Next is Cathy Wang.
Good evening. I am Cathy Wang. I have 2 kids in PUSD Elementary, and we are very excited to begin the new school year. However, the high ratio of using educational technology instead of using paper and books at school makes me very worried. You can imagine how sad I am when seeing my kids coming back from school with red eyes, keeping on rubbing them, and complaining about how uncomfortable their eyes are. As a mom of 2 young kids, I disagree how educational technology is used currently. First, it is a critical period of eye development for kids from 5 to 12 years old, which is emphasized often by our ophthalmologists. Tons of research have shown that long-time exposure to screen will cause many kinds of eye problems, especially for kids who have weaker eyes. Every kid is different. Those who are not sensitive to digital screen can survive the storm of digital devices. The others are not so lucky. They will develop all kinds of eye disease since young age, or become nearsighted and wear glasses in their rest of whole life. Secondly, increasing screen time will cause increasing psychological problems in children, such as anxiety and depression. Parents who donate hundreds of dollars annually are willing to support the school to build a more positive environment, which will help our kids build good characteristics. If we use the donation to fund educational technology, it will certainly reduce the budget for other useful programs. After all, there is no research or fact showing that educational technology is more efficient. Well, there are many risks kids would have to take by frequently exposure to digital screens. I hope every kid has a safe and healthy learning environment at school. So please keep the paper-based education and use educational technology only as optional. Okay, thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Dr. Jessica Xi.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Xi. I'm a proud mom of 2 PowayUSD students. I'm speaking tonight both as a concerned parent and on behalf of PowayUSD Parents Group, a nonprofit organization focusing on quality education and health for all PowayUSD students. As a parent, I read Dr. Kim Phelps' August 23rd open letter with both hope and serious concerns. I'm glad that her first priority is to enable our students to be competitive in a global society. I'm also encouraged that her fourth priority is to restore financial stability to the district and regain trust from the community. However, like many other parents, I'm deeply concerned of a second priority to increase the educational technology presence in our schools. When PowayUSD launched one-to-one iPad program 3 years ago, so many parents expressed concerns that the Board of Education established Educational Technology Advisory Committee, or ETAC, in early 2015. After 1 year of extensive research and debate, ETAC presented its final recommendation at the May 30, 2016 Board of Education meeting, urging caution in implementing educational technology and imploring better health protection for our students. I'm surprised that the entire page of ETAC, including ETAC's official recommendations, was removed from PowayUSD website recently. Educational technology is nothing new. In 2007, South Korea launched an ambitious 10-year nationwide digital learning initiative in K-12 schools with the goal to fully innovate its primary education by 2017. The initiative was discontinued halfway in 2012. The 5-year experiment showed that 10% of 9-year-olds developed internet addiction, and 96.5% of high school graduates became nearsighted. 96.5%. Dr. Kim Phelps, mother to mother, please ask yourself whether it's ethical to force our children to take such high risks. We all make mistakes, but it's not acceptable to repeat the same mistake, especially when it is at the expense of our children. On behalf of PowayUSD Parents Group, I urge the district to provide paper-based curriculums as a standard option and change use of educational technology to optional. Every child deserves a safe and healthy learning environment in our schools. Please put our kids first, not iPads or Chromebooks. Thank you for your attention.
Janet Latang.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Kim Phelps, Superintendent's Council, and School Board Trustees. This evening, I would like to begin with a follow-up to my community comment to the board last month when I spoke of the installation of the solar shade structures on the Southwest Poway High School parking lot. I'm happy to report that Chad Coster and the district office have worked diligently with the City of Poway to minimize the impact of the solar structure construction on the day-to-day happenings at Poway High School. We greatly appreciate all the behind-the-scenes work so the folks at Poway High School can be on teaching and learning, not about parking. Also, the Poway High School community and those who live in the area surrounding Poway High School are grateful to the board's approval tonight of consent agenda item 5.2K for the tree removal service at Poway High School. Thank you. We hope that this service gets quickly scheduled. Also, this week is National Arts and Education Week. And throughout our district, performing arts groups are off to a strong start, preparing to perform for our local communities in the San Diego region. Last Saturday, Poway High School Poway Unified School District high school marching bands proudly marched down Poway Road as part of the Poway Days Parade. The PUSD marching bands are performing their field shows at their home field football games, and starting in October, will be competing at local and regional marching band competitions. Rancho Bernardo, Poway, Mount Carmel, and Westview High Schools will be hosting marching band competitions in October and November. These marching band competitions make for wonderful family entertainment and are a fantastic way to expose our young students to the different wind and percussion instruments and some fantastic music. Also taking the field next Wednesday, September 20th, are the top choirs from all the Poway Unified School District schools who will be performing the national anthem before the Padres game at Petco Park. Concert season at our high schools begin in October. Concert information may be found on each high school's performance group's website, but it's my hope that someday our community can access information about PUSD visual and performing arts events on our district calendar, which leads me to our district vision for visual and performing arts. Our district's 2017-18 LCAP calls for the development of a visual and performing arts task force this school year. I hope that work has already begun this fall to create a PUSD visual and performing arts task force. If not, please, I encourage the Superintendent's Council with the support of the board to begin this process. I ask that during the 2017-18 school year, the school board members request updates on the PUSD Visual and Performing Arts Task Force meetings and findings. I hope we all can support the work necessary to ensure that in the years to come, all PUSD students will have equal access to performing arts programs at all our schools. Thank you very much.
That was our last speaker.
All right, thank you everyone for that. That takes us to item 4.2. This is, oops, I'm sorry, 4.2 we just finished. 4.3 is our Classified Employees of the Year. I'll turn it over to Dr. Phelps.
It is now my honor to present for the board recognition our PUSD Classified Employees of the Year, Teachers of the Year, and our Volunteers of the Year. These employees and volunteers represent the highest caliber of people in PUSD working on behalf of our students. I'll now turn it over to Mr. James Jimenez, our Associate Superintendent of Personnel Support Services, and then followed by Mel Robertson, our Associate Superintendent of Learning Support Services, and then Mr. Ron Little, our Associate Superintendent of Business Support Services, to read the names, along with President O'Connor Radcliffe, and I will present the awards up front.
Thank you. This evening we'll start with our Classified Employees of the Year. I'd like to welcome Ms. Bridget Padilla, Administrative Assistant at Sunset Hills Elementary School, to the front of the room. Also welcome any family members that would like to join Ms. Bridget Padilla up front. In addition, her current and previous administrator, Ms. Tina Ziegler, as well as Ms. Lisa Wilkin, to join her as well. Bridget is Sunset Hill's biggest fan and cheerleader. She encourages everyone to adopt the no excuses philosophy and truly believes in universal achievement for all students. She is often seen giving positive character cards and caught being terrific slips to students and classrooms that are showing good character. From maintaining the school website and calendar to troubleshooting all over campus, Bridget does it all with passion and a smile on her face. Congratulations. Our second Classified Employee of the Year is Ms. Linda Farmer, Budget Analyst in Finance. And we welcome any family members or friends that are here would Linda as well to join her at the front, and I welcome Mr. Joe Tarantino and Joy Ramiro, her supervisors in the finance department, to join her as well. When the PeopleSoft software was implemented, Linda was at the forefront, conducting training throughout the entire district. Principals and coworkers are impressed with Linda's outstanding customer service and knowledge regarding attendance, instructional minutes, budget, and PeopleSoft. Linda also spent 6 years on the board for the Poway School Employees Association as Vice President, representing classified staff. Congratulations to Linda, and congratulations to our 2 PUSD Classified Employees of the Year.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. And now it is my honor to introduce you all to our 3 Teachers of the Year. Our first teacher, Mark Landsberger from Del Norte High School. If you could please join us along with your principal, Greg Mizell, and PFT President, Kelly Logan, and any family members you might have here, Mark. So Mark is a 20-year teaching veteran, developed his computer science curriculum from scratch, giving students insight and a deeper understanding of both C and Java programming languages. His computer science club students developed an app that was recognized by Apple, and he also advises a new club, Girls in Computing, to encourage more young women to pursue computer science. Mark, we'd like to give you a welcome and strong congratulations for your work with our students. Our next teacher we're going to recognize is Susan Michelena from Rancho Bernardo High School. And can we also be joined by Principal Dave Lemaster and any family that Susan may have. Susan's been teaching for 25 years in PUSD, from advanced placement U.S. history to online civics classes. Susan says one of her greatest accomplishments is teaching the values of American democracy and the principles of the Constitution that shape future public servants and leaders. As part of the PBS Digital Innovators of 2016, Susan participated in a nationwide program that introduces teachers to new ways of implementing technology into the classroom. Susan, congratulations. Please join me. And our third teacher of the year is Keith Obstad from Westview High School. I'd like to invite the previous principal, Todd Casson, and the current principal, Tina Ziegler, to join us. And I know that Keith's family is here with him. Keith has been teaching for 22 years in the Poway Unified School District. He's a strong advocate for the visual arts, both in the district and San Diego County. Keith can transform students who have never even held a paintbrush into creative, passionate artists. His students consistently produce artwork of the highest caliber, winning top awards and scholarships, and their homecoming speed paintings are an annual highlight on the Westview campus. Congratulations, Keith, and please join me in congratulating the 3 of them. As an additional note, our 3 Teachers of the Year will be representing PUSD at the Salute to Teachers on Saturday night, which is the county-wide recognition of all our teachers. So we will see you all on Saturday night. And at this time, it's my pleasure to present Ron Little, who will be introducing the PUSD Volunteers of the Year.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure this evening to present the Poway Unified School District Volunteers of the Year. First up is Rachel Allums from Twin Peaks Middle School. So if Rachel could come up with her... We invite Principal Dr. Kelly Burke and family members to come up as well. Rachel has served 2 terms as PTSA President, Parliamentarian, and Treasurer over the last 5 years at Twin Peaks Middle School. She started a back-to-school parent education event, hosted principal chats, and helped create School Year's Eve, a tour and orientation to ease the transition for new and incoming students. Rachel serves as a mentor to other PTSA presidents in the district, and she is also the PTSA president at Poway High School. Congratulations, Rachel. Next up, we honor Jenny Burnett from Pomerado Elementary School. We'd like to invite Principal Laura Crow and any family members to join Jenny. Jenny is a member of the PTA and School Site Council member, a classroom volunteer, and the yearbook coordinator at Pomerado. She is the driving force behind the annual ReWear sale and works with the school's Spanish-speaking families, encourage them to attend parenting classes, volunteer in the classrooms, and be an active part of the learning community. Jenny is described as a shining example of what a Volunteer of the Year should be. Congratulations, Jenny. And finally, we would like to honor Kathyrangi from Westview High School. Invite the previous principal, Todd Casson, and current principal, Tina Ziegler, to come up, as well as any family members. Kathy and her husband, Scott, have given thousands of hours of service to the students of PUSD. They have volunteered with Westview High's robotics programs for many years, attending every weekend meeting and many weekdays during build season. Kathy mentors students, manages the robotics website, serves as a driver, and guides the business administration for the program. Congratulations, Kathy, and congratulations to all of our PUSD Volunteers of the Year.
Board member or President O'Connell Ratcliffe gave me a moment to just point out some information that our last public commenter was the Volunteer of the Year for Poway High, Janet Latang. So congratulations, Janet.
So I would like to invite you all to the San Diego County Office of Education Salute to Teachers event this Saturday, where our Teachers of the Year will be honored and considered for one of the 5 County Teachers of the Year awards. And so we wish the best of luck to Mark, Susan, and Keith, and congratulations. And congratulations to every single one of our site representatives on your selection as our Classified Employee of the Year, Teacher of the Year, and Volunteer of the Year. You can see the complete list in the board packet, and they represent the very best of our team PUSD. Thank you.
All right, item 4.6 is our, well, this is a public hearing and a presentation. I think presentation is going to come first, to establish trustee areas and elections by trustee areas. Last month on October 10th, the board took action initiating the process of establishing 5 trustee areas within the district and changing the method of electing members of the board. Under the plan system, the voters in each of the 5 trustee areas will elect the board member from their own trustee area. This action of the board was to ensure full compliance with the California Voting Rights Act of 2001, also known as the CVRA, and was in response to a threat of litigation against the district alleging noncompliance with the CVRA. So tonight's second public hearing will be to solicit input from the public regarding the composition of the trustee areas. The district's demographer will draft some trustee map options, which will include a consideration of the input at the public hearings, and those map options will be made available to the public. Public hearings on the draft maps will occur at the meetings on October 12th and our regular board meeting on November 9th. After that time, the board is going to adopt a trustee area map for the district. So I'm going to turn this over at this time to Dr. Phelps.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to introduce and invite up to the podium, he's already there, Mr. Doug Johnson from from National Demographics Corporation to share information regarding the trustee areas and election by trustee areas. Mr. Doug Johnson.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Tough act to follow with all the volunteers at number one of the year. I have a presentation, and as was mentioned, the goal tonight really is to get whatever input the public wishes to provide before we draft plans. Let me jump in here. Just very briefly, for those that may have not been following this issue, the California Voting Rights Act is kind of sweeping the state and especially this portion of the county. Most of the cities and school districts in this area have been switching. We're at well over 150 school districts now have changed their election systems because of this law. 28 community college districts, over 66 cities. And I would say, for reference, before this law took effect, there were only 28 cities in the state that had district elections. So we've almost quadrupled that number under this law. One county board of supervisors, the reason only one is there was only one that wasn't already in districts up in San Mateo. The other 57 were already in districts, and San Mateo got sued and had to switch. And the reason that everyone's switching, just so people understand, it's not that these 200 plus jurisdictions were violating anyone's voting rights or civil rights or anything like that. What's really driving the change is that the one fight that's happened in Palmdale, where the city pushed back and said, we don't have polarized voting, they lost, and they had to pay $4.7 million to the plaintiffs' attorneys, and they actually had to pay about $2 million to their own attorneys. Same thing with Modesto. When they fought over whether or not the law was constitutional, they had to pay the plaintiffs $3 million and almost $2 million to their own attorneys. So the 200 plus jurisdictions doing this are doing it to avoid spending $500,000 to $1 million defending themselves and $1 to $6 million if they lose. So obviously that's a very big hit, especially for school districts these days. In terms of the timeline, just so people understand, unfortunately under state law we have to do this fast. They give us 90 days, and if we don't finish in 90 days, then the plaintiffs can swoop in and sue. And so this does happen fast. This is the second of the two, what we call the first round of hearings, where we don't have any draft maps out yet. This is before maps are drawn. Then in October 12th and November 9th, we'll have 2 more hearings, but we'll have the draft maps at that point. So if you don't get many public comments now, that's very common. When most of the comments come is when they have draft maps to react to. And people should know there will be a variety of maps. It's not just here's your map. There'll be 3 or 4 draft maps at least. Then the board chooses its plan, and unlike most issues, that's not the final step. Then there is the County Committee on School District Organization, which in San Diego is the county school board. They will come to the district, hold a hearing, and they will vote on final approval of the map. And the lines will go into place for next year's elections. The big change is now only people that live in the trustee areas where there is a seat up will vote that year. So people will only vote for their one board member, and they'll only vote every 4 years, not every 2 as they have so far. And the other thing to keep in mind is these lines will only be used for one election cycle. So 2018 and 2020. Then in 2021, we get the new census data, and we'll have to revisit the lines and see if they're still balanced or if they need adjustments. In terms of how the lines are drawn, there are really 2 sets of rules. The first are federal requirements. We have to have an equal number of people in each trustee area. We have to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, which means not dividing up any neighborhoods that are heavily Latino or African American or Asian American or Native American. And we also have to avoid racial gerrymandering. So to comply with the Voting Rights Act, race is one thing we look at, but it can't be what the court calls the predominant factor. It can be one factor, but it can't, we have to focus on neighborhoods, first of all, not on race. So it's our job and your legal counsel's job to make sure that all the maps that we bring to you comply with those requirements. Then where we really look to the public and ultimately to the board is to decide which map best meets what we call the traditional criteria. So these are not requirements, these are goals. And the ultimate plan chosen will be the best balance of these. The first is looking at communities of interest. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Then we want the lines to be compact, to be contiguous, and to follow major borders like major roads, geographic features. Those 3 are really so that it's easy for voters to know where the lines are. If they want to grab their neighbor and say, let's go walk precincts for this great candidate, we want them to know which precincts to walk so they're not knocking on doors of people that aren't in the area. And it's easier if you can say it's from the highway to the river than up this street, over that street, and up this street. to the degree possible, of course. And then the last one listed in bold here is the respect the voters' wishes. To the degree possible, the courts have said it is fine to try to avoid pairing board members. The real reason for that, though, is for the voters. We want the voters to decide which board members have earned a re-election, not me coming through with my pen and telling the voters, you may want these 2 board members, but now you can only have 1. So, and again, that's a goal, it's not a requirement. And then planned future growth is grayed out here, just so people aren't surprised. Because these trustee years will only be used once, there's not going to be a lot of growth. But in 2021, when you revisit them, this will be much more of a factor because those lines will be in place for 10 years. So we can look at that a bit to try to accommodate future growth and keep them balanced longer. So those are the criteria. In terms of total population, we're at 188,000 and change according to the 2010 census, which is the numbers we use. That means about 37,600 and some people per trustee area. So these are fairly large trustee areas. I'm not going to go through all the data on this sheet, obviously, but we will give a ton of data on the website, on the district's website, will be all of these demographics for every trustee area in every draft map, so people can look at the percentage of total population, the percentage of eligible voters by race and ethnicity, and then probably more important for communities of interest, look at things like language spoken at home. What percentage of the residents of that trustee area speak English or any other language at home? Education levels, income levels, and then in the bottom right are things that are perhaps most often referenced, which is renters versus owner-occupied housing and single-family housing versus apartment housing. So whatever people want to look at in terms of numbers, socioeconomic numbers to define their communities, we have all this data and we map it for them, and all this would go on the web. In terms of the Voting Rights Act, looking at Asian American concentrations, you have some of that in the western and southern portions of the school district. So we want to be sure to keep each of those individual pockets united. You don't have, I'm talking about no racial gerrymandering. We don't need long, stringy fingers to connect the different distinct neighborhoods. But each of those neighborhoods we do want to try to keep together in a single trustee area so we don't dilute their voting strength. Latinos, no surprise, you all know your district pretty well. There really isn't a heavily Latino neighborhood in the school district. You see the yellow, which represents 60 to 75% of the eligible voters in that census block are Latino, but that's 60 to 75% of the 4 residents in that. So it's not enough that they're going to drive the overall demographics of a trustee area. And this is fairly common in this area. So I show this map just to reflect that it's not really something that is going to drive whether a map is legal or not. And then, of course, when you put together take out the Latinos, the also small African American population, the Asian American population, you do get the reds are 75% and above of the eligible voters are white. The orange is 60 to 75%. So you do get kind of a central swath that is more diverse. Again, even in those green areas, we're still 40 to 60% of the eligible voters are white. So there's no real pocket that is really what we look at as segregated housing, as we sometimes get in the Central Valley and other jurisdictions. You don't have that here, which is good to see. So other than those Asian American pockets that we need to be careful not to divide, there's obviously a lot more to look at in terms of community of interest. And when we do that, there are a couple of things we can look at. And people often forget that there are 2 questions about communities of interest. One, what is your community of interest? Usually in school districts, we're talking about attendance areas. But it could also be areas around a park. It could be areas with any shared school issue or anything like that. Really, what people's community or neighborhood comes down to is whatever the people in that neighborhood say is their neighborhood. And then often forgotten is the second question, although this comes up the most with school districts. Okay, here's your community of interest. Do you want it kept together in one trustee area? Gives you the maximum vote for you and your neighbors to influence who represents them. But it only gives you 1 vote. And keep in mind, it still takes 3 votes to pass anything. So the other concern that comes up a lot with school districts, and this is where a lot of the variety in the maps comes in, is one scenario, keep each attendance zone together, maximize its vote so it has a loud voice on the board. Or 2, which is probably more common, take each attendance zone and make sure that 2 or even 3 trustees have to answer to the voters whose kids go to that school. And this avoids the problem of a trustee starting to feel like they own a school. You may have seen it from the large district down the road a bit. They had some problems last year with board members bypassing the superintendent and giving orders to principals and actually trying to remove staff. That board member, thankfully, was forced to resign. But that is the kind of thing that can happen. You see it in county supervisors. It's much more common in county supervisors where they really run their districts. We want to avoid that in a school. We still want it to be a board. Hopefully these trustee areas matter on election day and don't matter much after that. That's our goal. So very often we will look at the community and the direction will be, we like the maps where every school has 2 trustees answering to the parents from there or more. Of course, every school site will only be in one trustee area. Every piece of geography has to be in its own trustee area. But the key thing is the kids and their parents who vote, and your high school seniors who vote, hopefully, that they have multiple board members that answer to them. So that's the second question. First, what is your community? Second, does your community want to be united in one seat for one loud vote, or does it want multiple board members answering to it? Put the attendance zones up. This is a large district. The odds that we could actually get 2 or 3 board members representing every elementary school district or every elementary school attendance area will be difficult because they are small relative to the size of the board. But many of them could have that situation. And then it's much more possible to do when we're looking at middle school attendance areas and high school attendance areas. I should note, if you're doing that, sometimes the lines look funny. So people shouldn't be surprised if a couple of the maps look funny. But keep in mind, and we will explain, it's for a policy reason. I should put it in the presentation, but I would say if you Google Central Unified School District up by Fresno, they wanted at least 3, and if possible, all 5 board members to represent pieces of every elementary school attendance zone. It is a wacky looking map as these tails go all around, but it worked. It achieved the goals of the California Voting Rights Act. It led to a switch from 1 Latino on the board to 3. And every board member answers to the parents from every school. So but it's a very funny looking map. So just to caution people not to be surprised if you get funny looking maps. And then of course your high school attendance zones, we can certainly look at multiple board members for each of those. Then one thing that was, I'm sure you're aware, was very successful for the city's effort is we put up an online tool where people can draw their own maps. And the school district is actually our first school district to do this, which we're very happy to see and excited to see how it goes. Where anyone can go to the district's website. Let me see if I think we have it up. Yes. And if they click on election district mapping, it has both information for those interested. And this is, we'll have links to the draft maps once they're available, and it has all the dates and all that kind of information. Lots of background and the hearing notices and things like that. But at the top, there are these training videos, a quick start guide in English and Spanish, and then follow this link. Oops. Yes. And people can create their own user ID, log in, and get to the site. In the interest of time, maybe I won't spend a lot of time showing that, but what this... here we go. There is a quick, again, here is the links to the quick start guide and the short training videos. When you get into it, I can get back to the show. There we go. You log in and there's the help stuff. This is what it looks like in the main screen once you're in. I do caution people. This is old software. The software is written in 2009 for the 2011 redistricting cycle. California is the only one doing any districting right now, so they're not upgrading it. And it feels old, and it is old, and it's a little clunky. But once you get into it, people are really into it. People rarely submit one map. If they figure out how to do it and submit one, they usually do a second and a third, and we love that. So the key things are, and they can refer to this too, you zoom around a lot like you would in Adobe Acrobat. You zoom in and zoom out with the arrow keys. You can use the little hand to slide the screen around and move around so you can zoom in and really get the detail. You pick either a new trustee area, they call them districts in the system just generically, or if you want to add people to an area, you choose where you want to add it, and then you can click the little, these tend to be logical if you know where to look for them. The single click, you can click block by block. Very slow. I don't recommend that. The circle tool is kind of useless because who's going to draw a perfect circle? But you use the little shape to draw a shape, and it will pick all of the census blocks in that area. One thing, just so people know, it often will pop up saying that area is larger than 4 square miles. Someone's tried it. That's because the server can't handle choosing too many blocks at once. You just have to pick it in pieces. Your ultimate trustee areas will obviously be bigger than 4 square miles. You just have to pick them area by area, one at a time. The other very handy tool is this line tool, where you draw a line and it will pick every census block that you touch in that, and then you assign it. As you're doing it, it will tell you how many people you've chosen and how close to the perfect balance that, or the target number that district is. Down here you can get some demographics. Admittedly, as some people have already run into, the system's not good at managing that screen, but it does all right. If you sort through it or if you call us, we can help you if you're interested in a specific demographic. And then down here are the layers and maps where you can color in the map depending on, if you want that Asian American map, you can pull that up. If you want a map of where the renters are concentrated, you can pull that up. You can pull up income, education levels, things like that. You can put all that on the map to look at as you're working, or just color it in so that each trustee area is a different color. So we are available. There's contact us information, which is actually it goes straight to us, and if we don't answer, we get a text message saying someone has left a message. We try to get back to people the same day. People can email. We're not 24/7. The software would cost a heck of a lot more if we were, but we do try to respond very quickly because we do see it's hard to use, but we love to see people interested. And people should not feel limited to using this. I do want to emphasize, if people want to draw a map on a napkin, if they want to get a printed map or use one of those attendance zone maps off of the website, just draw your lines, send it in, and we will put it in the computer. And when they come to the board, all the maps will have the same layout and demographics that we do for everybody. So happy to help anyone interested. And again, and as mentioned on the district's website, we are looking to get the maps by October 4th, because we have to post them 7 days before the October 12th hearing. So that only gives us a day to turn around. So if people can send them in early, we'd appreciate it. Yes, please draw your lines. And in the site, you'll see there's a submit message. Back to the right thing. There's a submit button, which is really easy to use. It asks you to share why you drew the map the way you did. Essentially, that goes straight to the board so that you all understand what the person was trying to achieve, and then we process it and get it to you. So if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them, or after the public comments.
I had a question on your timeline. If you look down on the bottom, you indicate the November 18 and November 20 elections, and you indicate the first 2 trustees would hold elections in 2018, and the remaining 3 would be in 2020. Was that arbitrary? Did you just decide there's got to be 2 in one and 3 in another, so I'll just put them on there, or did you actually give that some thought?
No, excellent question. I didn't address that. It has to match up with your existing cycle. So the current board has 2 seats that are up in 2018. Is that backwards?
Yes.
No wonder that triggered. Okay, my bad.
It was inadvertent.
Yes.
That answers my question.
Thank you for catching that then. So it does have to match your current cycle, so I will switch that.
Yeah, I have several questions. Maybe I should just ask one and see if anybody else has any. Let's see. I was looking at the Poway one, or reading about that one, and with regard to the population, is there a requirement for the variance? Is 10% like a hard population variance?
Yes. So the difference between the largest and smallest can't be more than 10%. For just ease of reference, we say aim for plus or minus 5% deviation, and that's a legal requirement.
So, yeah, plus or minus 5% would be about 18 on roughly, what is it? Can't do my math. 1,800, 18.
Yeah, your target is 37,000 and change,
8.
so you're talking about 1,800. Yeah.
Okay. Did anyone else want to ask?
Anyone else with a question before? Okay, Dr. Patel.
Question. Are you familiar with any processes, and I think I've heard some, of where the county chooses a different map than what a board has chosen? And what is the chance of that, and what is the repercussion of that?
As far as I'm aware, it hasn't happened yet in any of the counties. Pardon me?
It happened last night.
Oh, did they really?
It did? The county board rejected Oceanside's school district boundaries. Yeah. And they chose another map on the spot.
Right. Okay. Grossmont High was also the first time I've ever seen the county board hold 6 hearings on the map, in addition to all the hearings the board had held. So yes, well, apparently last night was the first. I have heard some jurisdiction, Fullerton Elementary actually did the assignment of the years wrong. They picked the wrong trustee areas based on law, so that the county committee switched that. But that was very clearly tied to the school district had done it wrong. So they were fixing it to comply with the state law, or at least their interpretation of it. No, last night would be the first time I've heard of that. Granted, Oceanside's process was very controversial. There was a lot of controversy through the process, and the councilwoman who was pushing for the other map she or her people were at every meeting pushing for that other map the whole time. So hopefully this won't be anywhere near that contentious. So.
Yeah.
Oceanside City Council, that's all. Schools.
Schools.
Yeah. Cool. Does anyone else have any questions before I go back to Ms. Beatty for her second? No? Okay. It's yours.
So you had mentioned 3 or 4 maps might come up next, but do all of the maps come before the board, or is there a screening process before that?
A good question. So you will see all the maps. We will separate them. People can draw maps that are not population balanced. People can draw maps that aren't contiguous. If you saw some of the city maps, one guy really liked the system and drew concentric circle council districts just because he could. So we will separate out those maps that don't meet the legal requirements or that clearly are just interesting.
As long as they're legally compliant, then they...
Yeah, then you'll get a second group, which are the maps that are legally compliant, that are the ones we suggest you consider from. And I should emphasize that the draft maps are not the final maps. That's why there are the 2 steps. People can certainly come in and say, we like this, the west part of this map, the east part of this map, NDC, can you put those together? And often we can. So we will segregate them into, you'll see them, but we will also say, we don't recommend you seriously consider these because they're not population balanced or whatever the reason is.
I noticed that on the Poway site. They had all the maps, and then it said this one had to be rejected for this reason.
Yeah, traditionally we would actually go back to the user who submitted the map and say, your map isn't balanced, but this is the issue. We can help you fix it. Unfortunately, with the new state-imposed timeline, there's no time for that. So.
I have one more question. When individuals from the community submit maps, are they submitted anonymously? Or can they be submitted anonymously? Or is it encouraged that their name is actually associated with their map?
They can submit it anonymously. The system asks for an email address, but it doesn't verify it. And people can, of course, walk in or mail in a map. What we often say is you can do that. We don't recommend it because things that have names tied to them will carry more weight with their fellow residents and with the board than anonymous items.
And I guess if there's an issue with the map, we can't find them.
Right, exactly. So it is suggested that they do it. Sometimes jurisdictions will ask that the maps be presented in public anonymously. So we'll show them by number. We want to avoid any issues tied to people and things like that. We're happy to do that with the caveat that we do have the records of who submitted it. It's subject to Public Records Act request and things like that. But the timeline's so fast, sometimes that 10 days is enough to ensure it's anonymous through the process. But that's only in the jurisdictions that ask for that.
Just a real quick technical question then. It's done by census blocks, the map is that the same thing as precincts?
No, they're actually smaller than precincts. So it really is, in the kind of squarely drawn city blocks, they are city blocks. Where we run into problems is hills. Hills and cul-de-sacs. The census doesn't like hills and cul-de-sacs. And so two cul-de-sacs that are back to back will be in the same census block every time, even though you may have to drive 5 miles to get from one to the other. In the city, the big issue was every house that backed onto the big hill was in the same census block, even though you had to drive all the way around, and it made it a huge census block. I think it's at that 2,000 people in one block. So where you have nice square city blocks, each of those will be a census block, much smaller than a precinct. And the precinct lines will be redrawn by the county to match the trustee areas. So it's okay to split them. The county will then adjust those lines. So you won't have a precinct that has some voters in one trustee area and some in another.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, thank you, Mr. Johnson. That was very helpful, very informative. At this time, I need to open our public hearing. So public speakers will be allotted 3 minutes to provide input, just like our normal public speaking time. So at this time, the public hearing is now open at 7:10. So I'll ask our board clerk to call the first speaker.
Bill Huff.
Oh, hi, I'm Bill Huff. I live in Torrey Highlands. One daughter goes to Black Mountain. Thank you to the demographer for the presentation on that. But one thing that's not quite clear to me and that I would request is that some consideration be given to the number of students that live in each district. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm wondering if it might work out that, say, some of the newer areas with more younger families might have a higher ratio of students per population and than some of the older areas, and so I would hope that some consideration be given to somewhat equalize the number of students per each district. Like, I don't know if it's 35,000 or whatever, then try to at least roughly have 7,000 students per district, or at least give some consideration of that. And also, if that number could be somehow presented on the maps to so that people could understand what the implications of that are. That was it. That's just. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your comment.
Clarifying questions of Doug.
Let's finish that.
The next speaker is Janet Latang.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Johnson for his presentation. That was really informative. I spent a couple hours messing around with the mapping program, and it's pretty complicated, but kind of an interesting process. So I'll keep trying to plug at it, but I have lots more work to do, and especially after what I learned tonight. I think my primary question, and whether it's part of this process, is how are we going to determine which 3 trustee areas would be on the ballot and which 2 would not, because I'm just not sure how it's going to be determined and when that will be determined. So I think along with all the other great questions you guys had, that's the one question I was wondering about too. And that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Do we have any further speakers?
There are no further speakers at this time.
Okay, I would love to actually have us direct our superintendent and staff to take those questions from Mr. Huff and Ms. Latang and maybe put the answers, post them on our website. I think it would be more helpful that way to everybody who gets in there. If that's okay with both of you, we have consensus to direct.
Yes, please.
Can I have some head nods, yes or no? Can we direct? Sure, if you can do this fairly briefly. Thank you.
Yes, I'll be brief, and then we'll send the answers over to the district staff. So we go backwards. In terms of which areas are up in 2018, this is the other, keeping this simple is the other reason to try to have a board member in each area. Because if it's one board member in an area, then the area is assigned to that board member's re-election year. It's pretty straightforward. If we end up with a trustee area with multiple board members, ideally they would both, whatever board members are in there would be up in the same year. So the trustee area would match up and they could both run. If 2 board members are in an area who are on different election cycles, then so you'd have a 2018 board member and a 2020 board member. The way San Diego County interprets that law, the rules, that trustee year would be assigned to 2020. And so the 2018 board member would finish their current term and leave the board, no matter what the voters thought. So it does get complicated when you end up with pairs who are in different years. And of course, however that pairing matches up, that's what dictates the resulting vacant seat would get the other year, essentially is how it works. So it's really simple if there's one board member per area. The moment you get a pair, it gets complicated. And when the draft maps come out, they will either on them or on a table will be listed the options for those election years. In terms of indicating the student counts on the map, that actually is technically very difficult because we don't have the student counts. The one thing I can say is it won't show on the map. We don't have a color theme. But in the data sheet is the percentage of households that have a child under 18. So it doesn't indicate whether or not the student or whether the child goes to Poway Unified, but it does give you a sense of the number of households with a child under 18. So to somewhat that degree, it really highlights if you have a Sun City retirement community or anything like that, that pops immediately. But there is some data. Unfortunately, compiling the district's data and getting it into a format that we could use, much less on the tool, would take much longer than the time available to us. And I'll get that information over to the superintendent.
That would be great, and I'll thank you once again, Mr. Johnson. And I'm going to close the public hearing then now at 7:14. Our next public hearing, as we said, on the draft maps, we'll have some maps to look at. Will take place during our regular board meeting Thursday, October 12th. So see you then. Thank you. Item 4.7 is our internal controls assessment review. Mr. Little.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Last September, you'll recall the board expressed interest in engaging an outside firm to conduct an assessment of PUSD internal controls procedures and practices. After soliciting an RFP, Moss Adams was selected in December of 2016 to perform the internal controls audit. Staff is pleased to have Moss Adams here this evening to share that assessment with the board and the public. Staff views this audit, and all audits for that matter, as an opportunity to learn and to improve. And to this end, we'd like to thank Moss Adams for its work. So this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Mark Staranka, partner, and Ms. Skila Alcott, manager for Moss Adams, who will present the report.
Just waiting for the cue. There we go. Good evening. Mark Staranka from Moss Adams. It's a pleasure to be here. So to the members of the board and the administration, it's nice to be able to share the work that we performed. And really this is about just, as Ron was indicating, about just learning from the things that you do. And our goal here tonight is to help you learn about what we did, what's important, and hopefully some of the takeaways that we'd like you to have. So, internal controls, not the most interesting or a sexiest thing in the world. She'll disagree, but that's what I think. But they're an important part of how our organizations operate. And so what are they? They're policies and procedures, their roles and responsibilities, their reviews and reconciliations of information, their the use of technology to automate things and control access to information. All those things are happening behind the scenes, and really they, on one hand, help to hopefully keep us out of trouble, and on the other hand, help us be efficient and effective in what we do. So our charter was to look at key controls, and just to give you a sense, and these are right from the request for proposals. Many of these are controls that we would typically look at, and some of these are controls that we would look at sort of when we get to a more detailed level. But they're all play a role of protecting your assets and resources and supporting the financial reporting of information in a timely fashion. That's the role of controls. So what did we do? So it's pretty straightforward. So we review relevant policies and procedures. We talk to the people who are responsible for carrying out these controls. We observe how they do what they do. So we're trying to get an understanding of what's in place and what you're actually utilizing. We compare that to the policies. Are you following the policies the way they're written? Some places policies aren't in place. Some places policies are very out of date. Yours are actually in reasonably good shape. So then it's about, okay, how does the district operate? Are we operating according to those policies and procedures? And then in terms of those controls, if we're following them and they're in place, are they really doing what we would hope that they would do? Are they actually protecting resources and assets and supporting your financial reporting? So are they working? Are they serving their purpose? And so finally, so what do we do with those? So take payroll and timekeeping. We're going to have a set of controls that we'd expect to be in place, and we're going to review your operations relative to those controls. So we'll state a control objective, and I know you've seen the report, so it's a real big sort of boring matrix of evaluating controls. So what's the control? If there's no issues with the control, that doesn't show up. If there is some opportunity for improvement, which we're calling an issue, but we truly view it as an opportunity for improvement, that we've defined what that is. Then we're talking about what's the likelihood that something bad might happen relative to that control, and what's the likely impact if something bad happens relative to that control. And then finally, what are recommendations? How can we strengthen how you operate in order to make that control stronger and really compliant with what you seek it to do? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scylla, and she's going to give you sort of more interesting information.
All right. Thank you very much. Scylla, Outcult Manager with Moss Adams. So I want to first start with commendations. So there are a few areas that we wanted to highlight in particular where the district does have internal controls in place that we assessed as adequately designed. Again, we're looking at the design of these controls. We didn't test the effectiveness of them and the efficiency of them. That's the next step. But we want to be sure to highlight. That these are places where some strong internal controls do exist. So one of those is the accounting division currently performs thorough reviews of the revolving cash fund or RCF reimbursement requests. They also are very effective at tracking the timeliness of those submissions. Additionally, the payroll division performs payable time audits, which is something that we are always pushing for and rarely see. So we always want to give people a gold star when they are actually doing that. And then lastly, the accounting division also has a detailed review process for the business training and conference expense reimbursement process, which is also a great thing to see there. Again, like every organization, there are opportunities for improvement. We're going to keep this on the high level, but are happy to take detailed questions once we finish our presentation. So overall, the greatest areas for opportunity, if you look as themes, there's opportunity for training, like many organizations. Also opportunity to increase some systems and processes in place that relate to the enforcement action that's taken if noncompliance exists. So really putting in place some more systems around what to do if certain actions are detected that are not in line with the policies that do exist. So we have 53 control issues here. I'm not going to discuss all of them, but I'll touch on a few in some of the different areas. So for example, within the revolving cash funds, some of the issues that we found there that were more notable were inadequate segregation of duties related to the revolving cash funds, in particular, certain people having access and responsibilities within those cash funds, but also being able to get access to reimbursement themselves. So you never want to have one individual who can authorize their own transaction, essentially. Additionally, as I mentioned before, and this is going to be a theme, there's a lack of cohesive enforcement action in place regarding instances of noncompliance related to the RCF reimbursement process. Next up, the payroll and timekeeping. We had a number of different control issues that we list within the report, but they can really be boiled down to, I think, two main points. One being that you have a manual process in place right now, which leads to a number of other issues. So with any time there's manual time entry, you have the risk of human error. It's also not the most efficient use of your trained payroll technicians' time. They could be doing some additional work if that was, if more information technology was used in that place. Additionally, the other issue on the payroll and timekeeping has to do with a lack of secondary review for accuracy on a number of different things. We cited examples about payroll schedule as well as pay rate. Moving on, and again, trying to keep this high level, the use of vacation, we noted opportunities for improvement there, which I think the board is already well aware of, but carryover limits of vacation time have not been enforced. It's not been enforced consistently, I will say, and I think some of those issues are exacerbated currently by the fact that there is not an information system in place for tracking vacation at the moment. Moving on, billing and accounts receivable, there's opportunities to improve, for example, the reconciliation with the school dude system that's used for, such a great name, that's used for invoicing for district facilities. Purchasing and accounts payable, we noted some issues with segregation of duties. We also noted, again, some issues of non-compliance, but within the policies and procedures, there are not strong teeth there for when non-compliance does come up. It's a common practice. It's something that we see a lot, where there's a policy and then I'm always saying, okay, well, what if someone breaks it? It's like, oh, well, we have to lay that out of what's going to happen and then make sure that we follow if something happens, that people are held accountable for those actions. Similar with the P cards, it's also important to note on P cards that there isn't a formal training program in place. So it's great. Ideally, you would roll out some additional enforcement action, notifying people of here's the new policy and procedure related to the purchasing cards. In there, you'll note that there's this program that spells out what the consequences will be for noncompliance, and that can all be part of a new formal training program. Some of the other issues, we noted one issue for travel and conference, consultant contracts, and then I would say the biggest one in overall control environment was that the city does not currently have a strong program related to fraud, waste, and abuse. The reason that this is a really important one, in my mind, to bring up is because a fraud, waste, and abuse program is particularly having a well-publicized tip line is, according to the ACFE, the Association,
Certified Financial Examiner.
Yeah, the certification I have. It's the Association for Certified Fraud Examiners. That it's the number one mechanism for detecting fraud, and yeah. So again, it is a great way to prevent issues. It can also be a deterrent if people know that that's out there, and if someone's doing something wrong, that it's easy to report that. And lastly, I will mention, so we mentioned some things about the district's policies. So unlike many of our other clients, I was delighted to see how many policies there are, and that's fantastic. I would say the one issue that we want to note in terms of the overall control environment is that there are some discrepancies between different policies, and there isn't necessarily a cohesive policy hierarchy. So ideally, you would have the different policies and they would layer on each other, and they would refer to each other as necessary and not be duplicative, so that when something has to change, you only have to change it in that one place. but we found some instances where things were out of date. And one of the other issues when things are out of date is then people go, oh, well, the policy doesn't apply anymore because the system that it says we have to follow isn't in place anymore. And they assume that all of the rest of the rules that were listed there have all also gone out the window. So that's a really important thing in terms of maintaining a strong control environment.
I was just going to say, before we go to conclusions, one thing that we always like to mention is, so you think, okay, this is an audit, and you think your external audits, right? And so a finding in an external audit context really is not a good thing. A finding in this regard isn't a bad thing. So, I mean, our job is to find as many opportunities for improvement, which is what they are. Some are small, some are big, but I just want you to be able to distinguish between when you're doing something that's internal audit, really these are opportunities for improvement. If you're getting findings in an external audit, those are things that you certainly don't want and you're trying to rectify as quickly as you can, and often internal audit helps you do that, but there's a big difference between the use of the term finding in those two contexts.
Thank you. That's a good point. So in conclusion, so now that we've gone over some of the areas of improvement, what's next? That probably seems like a lot on your plate. So on this slide, we've suggested some priorities and what you could tackle and what might be some of the first ones to do. So the first ones all mention improving the controls that are existing and testing those controls. And we would prioritize the RCFs, payroll and timekeeping, vacation administration, and billing and revenue collection. We would also recommend looking at improving improving compliance with the purchasing policies that would both relate to P cards as well as that would spill over with the RCFs, as well as disseminating more information about using purchase orders appropriately. And then lastly, improving the overall control environment. With all of those priorities, depending on what the resources are internally, it's something we want to mention that the district could consider adding an internal audit function, either that is staffed by district employees or contracted out, simply to speed up the process. So what we often find is after we do one of these reports and I present the issues that we found, that people are a little deer in the headlights and go, Scylla, I don't know what to do next. And that's where having an internal audit function can help a little bit, because the existing staff may not have the capacity to implement these things. Either way, that's fine, but it's an education opportunity in terms of internal audit and what it can do. It can include testing internal controls. It can include providing that best practice guidance of, hey, we realize that you told us we're not doing this that well. Can you help give us some examples, knowing our system and our staffing constraints and all these other things? Can you give us some examples of how we can do that better? As well as policy and procedure guidance. I shouldn't fail to mention the administration of a fraud, waste, and abuse program that could include training as well as the administration of a hotline. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I know that we're already starting some of this work and have started it.
Fantastic.
The board is already doing policy or procedure and policy and procedure. Well, we'll do the policy work. They'll do the procedure work.
Great.
Already on this as well. I know that I would like to see a public update at another board meeting. Maybe in 6 months. It looks like that's probably your recommendation for. In 6 months, we should see some real progress on these opportunities for improvement. And I know that I would love to have that presentation be public at a board meeting so that everybody gets to hear how much progress we're making with these opportunities, because I think we're going to get this done and I think we're going to do it right. So that would be my comment. Anybody have any comments or questions for our presenters?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here and for producing this report. I think my first question you may have answered in the 27-page report, the executive summary, second paragraph. You said, did not test those controls for operating effectiveness, which is assumed to be a forthcoming activity. Is that what you just touched upon with
Yes.
regard to either hiring, say, an outside consultant to actually do the implementation of these recommendations, or having someone in-house or in order to scale up as fast as possible?
Exactly. So given the fact that what we're looking at is controls across the whole organization, and we can't even cover every single control, but we're looking at and assessing key controls in these different areas. The scope to then test each of those at the same time is we never do both of them together. And part of that is also because it's really important to establish if a control doesn't exist there, then it would be a waste of resources to pull a sample, test each of those and say it's not there, it's not there, it's not there, as opposed to saying let's get a sense of the lay of the land here and get a sense of the relative strength of controls in different areas and kind of the maturity of those different areas, and be able to, instead of testing everyone at the same time, go, okay, this one, they have a strong process in place. So the travel and business expenditures, they have a strong process in place that is ready to be tested, as opposed to looking at somewhere else and saying, wait a minute, there's a lack of training over here, the policy is not updated, people may not know what the rules are, and there have been no consequences for breaking those rules. So before we go and test, and those are all factors that we would say, our test is going to basically say fail, essentially, for lack of a better word, that there's going to be an issue, but we've already identified it through our walkthroughs of how things are being done. So we can already say, hey, here are some ways that you can improve this process. Work on that process, and then after you've had 6 months of that process in place, then that's a great opportunity to test it. That makes sense?
I think you lost me a little bit. So you're saying this is the step after the internal auditor comes in and implements some procedures, and then it's retested?
So just think of it in terms of layers. So we did what we call an enterprise assessment, enterprise internal controls at high level across the organization. You could take any one of these areas and drill down and do testing in those areas. And that's typically what an internal audit function would do. A really good internal audit function would also help you improving in those areas, help you improve in not just in controls and performance of the district and the different facets of the district. But to answer your question, this is an assessment at a high level. You could do a deeper assessment just in terms of how things are working, but on an ongoing basis, you should be doing testing. It doesn't have to be internal audit. It can be your finance and accounting team. But typically, that's what you want to be doing to test, are the things that we're doing working the way that we want them to. And so we operated a layer above that in terms of this project. Does that help? Yeah.
All right. Dr. Patel. Yes.
Yeah, I have a very high-level question. You have risk level defined, let me go back. Impact occurrence is defined as level of significance if a negative event occurs. I looked at some of these, and my assumption was that the impact would have been higher than what was designated. Are you looking at number of occurrences or fiscal impact?
No. So I will be the first to admit that there's a lot of, there's not a lot, there's some judgment that goes into this. In terms of the likelihood of occurrence and the impact of occurrence. When we're considering the impact of occurrence in particular, it's fiscal impact, but in some instances, it can also be the impact on public perception, for example.
Yeah.
So there's some that you may look at and go, why is that one so high? Well, because if something were to happen, that one instance could have a very significant impact on the reputation of an organization.
Thank you. That clarifies things.
Ms. Beatty, yes.
The RCF, you had listed that as a commendation, so can you explain, because that has a high likelihood of occurrence with regard to the district not having a consistent and cohesive approach to the application or enforcement of the policies, and this is with regard to controls over revolving cash funds?
Sure. So what we found was that the accounting division's review of the RCF reimbursement requests was a comprehensive and robust review. However, what we found was lacking was when the accounting division cited reimbursement requests as non-compliant or missing information or not eligible for reimbursement, that the existing policies and enforcement structure was not supporting action, was not supporting their action. And so in instances we found that other channels where people went through other channels to get that reimbursement ultimately approved, as opposed to kind of circumventing the existing system. But part of that is because there's not a strong enforcement system in place. So I understand why it would be a bit confusing. I think what we were trying to say was that the accounting division is doing their job and following to the letter what the policy says and comparing the slips to what the policy says. I think the issue is then in the execution of this is something that's non-compliant. What happens there? Does that result in ultimately still a reimbursement and, oh, let this one go? Or does it result in, no, I'm sorry, this is non-compliant. You've been warned before. You will not be getting a reimbursement this time. And some of the other issues that we noted related to the RCFs really had more to do with on the ground at the different locations, who was involved in the process, and really having some concerns about the segregation of duty. Anytime that there is a reimbursement request at whatever organization, at whatever level, no one should be approving their own reimbursement. And so the lack of segregation of duties there was concerning.
Any other questions or comments? No? We're happy?
Actually,
Okay,
I did.
Ms.
I
Beatty?
thought you didn't have. Oh, okay. With regard to the control issue with regard to vacation payouts, what documentation exists regarding the vacation payouts?
Can you be more specific?
Let's see. So it's number 5 on page 11. The calculations for vacation payouts are performed by a single individual at payroll. So what documentations did you find existed for that? Let's see. It's payroll and timekeep. Under payroll and timekeeping, B, so it's B5, manual calculations. Actually, yeah, this was under, actually, let me correct this. This was an example under the payroll issue here. And it said a single individual on payroll performed the vacation payouts. Supervisor didn't verify the calculation.
So I would have to double check my notes. I believe the documentation that exists is a spreadsheet that is formula driven, that is used by individuals in payroll for the calculation of vacation payouts. And while, the fact that there's some formulas in there helps, it still could be manipulated and should be reviewed by a second person.
Thank you for your work. I appreciate it. I want to put forth a premise here and talk about whether you agree with it or not.
Sure.
Just that the report that you've given us basically tells us that we have internal controls in some places we lack them. In some places where we have them, they're functioning properly. In some places, they're not functioning properly. And what that tells me is that we need an internal audit function within our finance department. It can be internal, provided ourselves. It can be contracted out. But an organization of this size, $350 million annual budget, it's highly unusual to have one this large and not have an internal audit function, one way or the other. And you describe this, and basically their function is to take the roadmap that you've laid out and put in place the controls that meet those criteria, and then look further to see if there are other things beneath the surface that can be improved upon and justify their own existence. Is that a reasonable statement to make to the rest of my board?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable statement. The way you want to think about an organization, and you're correct, of this size, because it is a sizable organization, is, what finance and accounting should be doing is making sure that those controls are in place. Policies and procedures, training. It's especially important. You have centralized activities that happen within finance and accounting, and then you have non-centralized or decentralized activities that happen across the district. And that's what you're trying to, have standardized, consistent way that you're doing things well controlled. So accounting and finance, relative to financial controls, that's their job, is to try to make sure that they're in place, people understand their role, how to be compliant, training associated with that, oversight. What internal audit is typically doing is testing that. Is that control environment working? It's sort of by definition intended to be independent, because those weaknesses can be anywhere, right, within the organization, from the top of the organization, tone at the top, down to, the lowest level in terms of getting into the details. And so, would it be a best practice to have internal audit function? Yes. Would it be a best practice to have an audit committee? Yes. And that's the structure that you would want, is that it reports to an audit committee, which is a subset of the board. That would be best practice. That doesn't mean that's what you have to have, and there are lots of variations of that.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
One more? Yes? Yeah, maybe one, maybe two.
At least we know you read the report. Yeah.
Do I get points? D5, what is, you refer to the Franchise Tax Board. You said consider whether Franchise Tax Board intercept could be employed, and this is, I guess, with regard to, is it the tip line, or collections?
Yes. So in speaking with the accounting staff that's involved with revenue collection, I spoke to them about both the use of an outside collections agency, but also asked them if they were aware of the Franchise Tax Board. They were not familiar with their ability to use the Franchise Tax Board. I was able to provide them with the code and information about potentially the district utilizing the Franchise Tax Board intercepts as a way of a possible collection method for any outstanding debts owed to the district.
So whose debt would that, that's employee, vendors, consultants, what sort of debts?
It could be any of those. So anyone who owes the district money, and granted that we would expect that the district would have a policy about, we're not going to refer to outside collections or any outside entity for collection amounts under this certain dollar value or certain types of debt. Certain organizations choose, for a variety of reasons, to not refer out. But just in general, when I was speaking to them, I think it came up in particular around facilities rentals. And again, these are recommendations, so it may not be a large issue. It was when we got talking about, well, what do you do after letters are sent and phone calls are made and something doesn't get paid? What's your next step? And the answer was kind of, we don't have a next step at the moment. So we were working to talk about what possible next steps are. And as a public entity that qualifies, you would be eligible for the Franchise Tax Board tax intercept, which is a very low-cost way of recovering debts.
I'd be curious as to your thoughts, just pros and cons, real quickly, in terms of internal auditor as an employee versus an outside contractor or consultant.
Sure. So you have to take these answers as this isn't a fully objective answer, because we're the outsourced internal auditor for many organizations.
From an auditor perspective, what do you see as better,
yeah.
an employee or a consultant?
But I get this question a lot in this environment. So there, like everything, there's advantages and disadvantages for both. The primary advantage to having it internal is that it's someone that's here all the time, right? So that you kind of have the benefit that they're seeing and hearing things all the time. You have that presence. The reason that internal audit functions tend to mostly get outsourced is because in most organizations that's one person, maybe two, and they're typically in an organization for a long time. They don't have a breadth of experiences, and so what they can do is relatively narrow, and that's why traditional internal audit functions are just focused on internal controls. Versus if you outsource, you don't have that day-to-day presence, but you can access a much broader range if you outsource, to your advantage, a much broader range of resources. So I'll only use this as an example. Forget that it's us. But so where we're the internal auditor, where we've replaced a person, we'll have 10, 12 different people work with that organization over a period of time because we'll do lots of different things. So that's a benefit. They get to take advantage of it. We're not there every day, right? And so there's pros and cons to both. If you have a really, really good internal auditor and their employee, then that's great. And because you sort of get the best of both worlds, but that's sort of hard to come by. So respectfully, unobjectively stated.
And I would also add the independence piece, I think, really can't be downplayed, particularly in any organization where there have been any sort of structural issues. I'm just saying in general, and really having that objective outside party that is reporting to an audit committee and is not housed in a given department, for example, can really help.
And I apologize. I have to go catch a flight. I'm going to miss it. So I'm going to go. So I try not to miss it. Okay.
Please do.
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you so much. And
Wait, before you go, just one more question.
I'm still here for the questions.
No, I guess, and on that note, I think I would like to say that this was what we were hoping for when we authorized, that we said we want an internal process audit, and I think we got what we were hoping for as a board, and I think it's given us a pretty nice roadmap to what's the most vital to get, which opportunities we should attack first, and down the list. So I think we got what we were hoping for as a board, and I think it's going to strengthen our district in the long run. So thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, thank you.
I will say, as a layperson, it was very high level. So
it was, but the chart was good.
The
with
chart helped.
With the moderate, high, low. Yeah, that was great. That was good for us. Yeah, but at this time, I'd like to probably. Okay, before I recess, I do want to call a 5-minute.
Just on that point about the chart, the moderate, the high, low, et cetera, based upon Dr. Patel's question, what would have been a little bit more helpful too would be, differentiate between the impact fiscally versus the impact.
Got it.
Okay,
no, that's a great note. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
just have one last quick question, and the overall control environment with regard to the strong fraud, waste, and abuse. Can you expound on that a bit? The fraud, waste, and abuse program, and also the tip line, what that would look like?
Sure. So a strong fraud, waste, and abuse program has a number of different elements to it. So kind of the most basic, if you're going to do anything for a fraud, waste, and abuse program, you want to have a hotline. So what that means is you have a phone number. There's often an ability to report on the web as well. That is well publicized. It's given to your employees. It's given to part-time employees. Best practice is you make it publicly available. You make it well known to any contractors you work with, any vendors you work with. And the idea is that if anyone had a concern about potential fraud, waste, or abuse, that they can call this number. You are able to report anonymously, and From there, the report is taken, and depending on how the function is set up, then an independent party assesses what that issue is. For the cities and other entities where we serve as that function, you disseminate out. So typically 95% of the calls are completely irrelevant. The sprinkler is on over here and we're wasting water. Can someone turn it off? It's an important thing. We make sure that that gets to Public Works or to maintenance or whoever that is, but it's not fraud, waste, or abuse per se. And so you work on disseminating out. And again, all of this depends on how you've defined your policies and procedures and what process you've set up in place. So when a call comes in, it will be handled in X, Y, or Z manner. So oftentimes, if it's not that, it may be an HR personnel issue. So someone reporting what sounds like potential allegations of a hostile work environment. That's not fraud, waste, or abuse per se, but it is an important thing to be sure that gets handled, and that would then get routed to HR. Typically, issues that are actual fraud, waste, and abuse issues would be investigated through whatever the process is in place. So whether that's a given department is going to handle that, or if it's the internal auditor. So again, the hotline is the first step. The next layers, as I mentioned, are documenting your policies and procedures related to that, having an anti-whistleblower retaliation policy in place, making sure that that's adhered to. Again, publicizing that this fraud, waste, and abuse hotline is out there, having people talk about it, make sure that it's top of mind and people know this is taken seriously, as well as having training about it so that people really understand what does fraud mean, what does waste mean, what does abuse mean, and why it matters, and how it can make the organization better. And as I mentioned, all of these things are important because if any of these things are going on, all of the studies show that the tip line, that employees are the first ones primarily who are going to know if something's going on. And so you want to make it really easy for them to say, hey, I think something's going on over here, as opposed to make them feel uncomfortable or say, hey, I'm supposed to talk to my boss, but I think my boss might be doing something, for example.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again. And at this time, then, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess before we move to consent calendar. 5 minutes, seriously, 8 o'clock, we're starting back up. Thanks, everybody.
No. I was like, I can do it. It's okay. Thanks.
All right, we are back. Our next item is our consent calendar, approval of the consent calendar. So at this time, I'll start down at the end with, oh, okay. Dr. Phelps, I'll start with you.
Madam President, the staff would like to pull items 5.2L, 5.2M, and 5.2N to be heard under the Business Support Services 6.7 and 6.8 and 6.9 for further discussion.
Okay, done. And I will go down the line and ask if anyone else would like to pull something. Ms. Mishra?
I would like to pull 5.2K, please.
Oh.
I had wanted 5.2K, so I got beaten to it.
Deal?
Thank you.
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing, okay.
In addition, Madam President, I'd like to note that item 5.4G is asking the board to approve the board policy change without a first reading with the addition of the new ed code language in order to meet the timeline that we are required to meet.
Okay, and with that, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar minus the 4 items that were pulled?
Second.
Okay, on a motion by Mr. Sellers, second by Mr. Zane. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And I want to just take a moment to pull out the items that we're pulling.
Can you repeat which ones those were?
It is 5.2 K, L, M, and N. Ms. Mishra pulled K. Okay, then I'll go to our 6.0 items, and this is 6.1, certification of the 2016-2017 unaudited actual year-end closing financial report. Mr. Little.
Thank you, Madam President. Got my presentation here. Okay. Good evening. Tonight we present the 2016-2017 unaudited actuals for the board's consideration and approval. This report reflects the district's financial position as of June 30th, 2017 for the fiscal year end 2016-2017 across all funds, but we'll focus primarily on the general fund this evening. And I'd like to, before I start, acknowledge the hard work of the finance team in preparing the report and thank them for their efforts. So let's begin here. Okay. So in the first part of the presentation, we'll compare where we finished the fiscal year, our unaudited actuals, against where we anticipated completing the year, the estimated actuals. You may recall that the estimated actuals were presented as part of the 2017-18 budget adoption in June. And we're primarily going to focus, as I mentioned, on the combined general fund, so both unrestricted and restricted resources. So this slide is showing our revenues. And you'll note that our revenues tracked very closely to projections with less than 0.5% variance. Revenues indicate a net decrease of about $1.4 million compared with projections. Quickly going through the numbers, we had a slight increase in the LCFF funding given our increase in ADA. I think it was about 35 additional ADA. We had a slight increase in special ed property tax transfer. Federal revenues declined by about $1.2 million. Those were mostly deferrals, Title I, II, and Title III dollars that were not spent this year but deferred into next year. Similarly, with the state revenues, we have deferred revenues for the California Incentive Grant as well as TUPE. And then finally, our other local revenues were $900,000 approximately better than projected due to additional donations and facilities rentals. On the expenditure side, We projected $368.5 million in expenditures for the year, and we finished at $360.5 million. So while this sounds like a considerable savings over budget, the vast majority of these unused funds will be carried over into the current year for use this year. And we'll look at this a little bit closer a little bit later. So again, just going through the numbers very quickly, certificated salaries, the difference is primarily just the deferrals in Title I, II, and III. The classified salaries are vacancy savings primarily in maintenance and operations. Employee benefits are additional staff benefits and an adjustment there. Books and supplies are expenses related again to the federal and state deferrals. The services and other operating expenditures are utilities savings of about $900,000, as well as some routine regular maintenance money that was not spent. Capital outlay, as I mentioned, mostly around the California Incentive Grant, about $600,000, and we realized about $800,000 more of Prop 39 money for our California energy efficiency projects. Other outgo of $616,000 is special ed vacancies, and then we have less indirect, finally, in the last item of the $279,000, again due to the state and federal deferrals. So turning to our net activity, where we finished the year for the combined general fund. So the district, this is the center column, we realized $354.7 million in revenues. We expended $360.5 million. So our revenues were short of expenses about $5.8 million. However, we had other financing sources that included some loans that we took out, you'll recall, that year for IT and technology infrastructure, et cetera. That's about $12 million worth of other financing sources. So overall, at the end of the year, we finished with a net activity of a positive $6.3 million. So again, the good news is that we finished the year with a surplus, and as I mentioned, that surplus will be budgeted as an expense in the current year and add to the current deficit, obviously, as we spend that money down. And I'll just draw your attention to the net activity delta of $5.1 million. This is the difference that our fund balance will change compared to where we projected in June as we do our estimated actuals. And we're providing a breakdown of that $5.1 million in the next three slides. Very quickly, and I won't go through these again. Some of these were covered already in the revenue and expenditures. So this is the unrestricted general fund, the deltas in the ending fund balance. So obviously a positive number is adding to the ending fund balance, and a negative number is deficiting the ending fund balance. So you can see that we saved on utilities about $915,000 compared to where we thought we were going to end. Continuing with the unrestricted general fund, some minor adjustments there. We backed out the indirect costs that we normally charged our food and nutrition department due to their challenge last year fiscally. Had we charged them the full indirect, they would have been negative in terms of how they finished the year, and we can't have them finish negative by statute. So we backed out that indirect charge. So that's that $299,000 deduction there. We mentioned special ed and our RMA. And you'll see in a subsequent slide that we're recommending that most of that routine regular maintenance savings be carried over into this year to use for some facilities projects that we have. Turning to the restricted side, again, so these are just dollars that were not spent. I'm sorry, these are the variances over what we projected. So we mentioned we had about $830,000 more in Prop 39. We had about $489,000 more restricted lottery money, primarily due to our increased ADA. A little bit of mental health money there, $76, and some additional college readiness block grant money, again, due to the ADA. So the increase in our ending balance on the restricted side was 1.6, and total, as we noted, was 5.1. So now we're looking at the ending fund balance in our general fund. Again, this is the combined general fund, restricted and unrestricted. I'll draw your attention to the center column. So this is where we finished the year. We started the year with $59.2 million. We had net activity of $6.3 million. Our ending balance is just the sum of those two. So we're ending the fiscal year with about $65.6 million in our general fund as a fund balance. That represents about an 18.1 reserve level, which is obviously higher than the 16.3 that we were projecting. But again, most, if not all, of this 6.3 of net activity is going to be carryover, which we'll look at very shortly. So that $65.5 million is broken out, and the components are here. I won't go through them all. I'll just draw your attention to the restricted carryover of $5.1 million, as well as the unrestricted carryover. The restricted carryover primarily consists of our lottery instructional materials funds that we're saving up for our next textbook adoption, as well as the additional Prop 39 energy efficiency projects money. And then our unrestricted carryover consists of these line items, and I won't go through all of these, but I'll draw your attention to the $1 million of maintenance and operations that we're recommending adding back into the current year budget, again, to address some facility projects that either weren't addressed last year or have risen to the top of our priority list for the current year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about any of these components. But again, these are carryovers, so they're in our ending fund balance. As we bring a budget revision back to the board in October, we'll add these back in as expenditures, so our expense side will increase by this amount, right? So our deficit will grow in the current year because we're spending down carryover. This year we included all of the other funds in terms of our unaudited actuals. So again, I won't go through all of these. You can see that all of our funds, most of our funds are well positioned. Detailed information obviously can be found in the light reading that we provided you. Oh, it's heavy. The SACS report, which is the full accounting of all of our funds for fiscal year end. We do need to, however, point out Fund 63, which is our ESS preschool fund. Long story short, GASB 68 requires us to account for statewide net pension liability related to STRS and PERS, and we need to report our pro rata share of the state's unfunded pension liability for those two retirement programs. This is a new accounting treatment. For most of our funds, for all the other funds, that accounting treatment shows up on sort of the government-wide balance sheet that we present with the year-end audit. However, because Fund 63 is an enterprise fund, which is a proprietary fund, it has a slightly different accounting methodology that applies to it. And here we have to, by GASB, account for the OPEB liability on the major fund statement, which is the statements that you see here tonight and that you see in the budget book that we prepare. So when we make those adjustments, and again, these are just accounting treatments, again, we're adjusting for the statewide liability related to our retirement, our share. When we make those adjustments, and our auditors calculate based on the formula, right? So what percentage of CalPERS contribution statewide is the district's contribution? Well, it's somewhere between 0.2% and 0.3%. So if CalPERS has $100 billion of unfunded liability, then our share is 0.2% of that, right? So that's what we're writing off here. And it's really meant to be more transparent in terms of sharing with the public the true cost, the true future cost, right, of current obligations for retirement programs. But you can see how it impacts this particular fund. Had we not had these adjustments, we would simply have the beginning fund balance of our preschool program of $1.49 million, and we would simply add to that down the second row from the bottom, the net activity, which is the surplus that that program made this past year, $1.8 million. So this fund, last year we would have showed this as being positive $3.3 million. So again, it's an accounting treatment. One way to mitigate this, and our auditors recommend this, is we could move all of the Fund 63 preschool activity into Fund 12. And we could just have a sub-fund within Fund 12 that is demarcated primarily just for this program. So we'll come back to the board at a future meeting, and we'll talk about that and make that recommendation. So with that, we'd like to request approval of the unaudited actuals, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have one question, Ron. This relates to the last point you made. Why is the pension liability, the proportionate pension liability, being accounted for in the preschool ESS fund to begin with? Is it because it's an enterprise fund? It's the only one we have? Or?
Yes, it's because proprietary funds or enterprise funds use the full accrual accounting method, right? And treatment there is that is recognized on the fund statements. And the Fund 63 is the only fund of all of our funds that is a proprietary fund. If we had other proprietary funds, those two would have to be treated in this way.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick follow-on to that. So the recommendation is to eventually move those funds into Fund 12. I'm not familiar. What's in Fund 12?
Let's see what's in Fund 12. I have to check, review.
The bottom line, though, is that you don't have to use that same accounting method with Fund 12.
That's
because
correct,
it's not
exactly.
the same type.
Right,
Okay.
right. So Fund 12 right now is our state child care program, right? So it's
related,
It's
at least.
related,
It's not-
right? And again,
right.
they would be obviously two different programs, two sub-funds within that fund, right?
Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we're giving it to Ms. Beatty. Okay, on a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Ms. Beatty. Any further discussion on this one? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? All right, that one passes.
Thank
We
you.
like it when you find money, but thanks for explaining where it's going.
Thank you.
Six point two, proposed revisions to board policy section 6.40, purchasing of supplies, equipment, and services. Mr. Little.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. You'll recall that at last month's board meeting, we provided information to the board on the alternative procurement method known as CUPCA, the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act procedures. CUPCA allows the district to implement an expedited, less formal bid process related to public works projects with appropriate guidelines and checks and balances as per public contract code. Under CUPCA, the district would create and maintain a list of qualified contractors by the category of work they perform to elicit bids from on an as-needed basis. Last month, the board directed staff to bring back the requisite documents to the board to implement CUPCA. So the next two agenda items reflect changes to board policy necessary to adopt CUPCA and the three resolutions that follow on the agenda. Staff is asking, as Superintendent Phelps mentioned earlier, to make an exception to the board's own policy, about Board Policy 1.9 on board policy development, and forego the first reading and adopt the two policies this evening as policy, which would allow for the immediate implementation of CUPCA and allow us to move forward with some projects that we have in the works. As I noted on the green sheet, these policies were developed with guidance from San Diego County Office of Education and obviously are based on our new CSBA templates. So the first one, agenda item 6.2, is a revision to our current purchasing BP, and it adds language related to the superintendent and her designee and or his or her designee purchasing supplies, etc., on behalf of the district up to the amount specified in the public contract code as per the CUPCA Act.
Madam President, just a point of order. Is this item in the next one? Is it premature to get this before we vote on what is now 6.7, the consent item that was pulled for action? Should we amend the policies after we actually adopt the CUPCA?
I think it's the adverse. Yeah, I think we need to adopt the policies first, and then the resolutions follow the policy.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, is there a motion?
Should I ask a question first? Before
We'll take a question, yes.
Okay, thank you, Associate Superintendent Little. I just had a question on, so these policies, all the underlined are additions to our current policy?
Correct.
And about the middle of the page, all transactions, and this is Ed Code, referenced Ed Code 17605, all transactions entered into by the superintendent or designee on behalf of the board shall be reviewed by the board every 60 days. Can you explain what that would look like?
Those would be simply the contract reports that we bring to the board, the purchase order reports that we bring to the board. So you'll actually be seeing them, monthly, except in those months, obviously, they don't have a meeting. And I think, obviously, the goal here under CUPCA and under Ed Code is just to make sure that those agreements that the superintendent or designee may enter into are reviewed in a timely fashion by the board.
So I guess what I wanted to clarify is, so one purchase order can be up to a maximum, was it 175,000?
One purchase order can be up to a maximum of $45,000.
Or going into a contractual relationship.
A contract could go up to 175.
175.
Yes.
So when it says review every 60 days, would that be that one project, or would that be each project would only be seen once every 60 days, all the projects that were approved?
I think the intent is to review all agreements that were entered into within a 60-day window.
So it's within
Keep
60 days
rolls.
after it's been approved, then it's brought before the board, and it's only brought just once, not
Correct.
like every 60 days for
That's
the
correct.
duration of the contract?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Move to approve?
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, on a motion by Ms. Beatty, second by Mr. Sellers. Any further discussion here? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous.
Thank you. And the next item is actually an addition. So this is 6.40A, bids. And this stipulates the relevant public contract code language related to accepting, rejecting, and awarding bids. And in addition, obviously, the proposed language around emergency actions as per the public contract code under CUPCA.
Any questions for Mr. Little on this item?
I just had a question. So what are the are there changes? Nothing's tracked in this policy, so.
This is a new policy.
So the whole thing is new?
Yes, we're adding this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If there are no further questions, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
All right, on a motion by Ms. Beatty, second by Mr. Sellers. Any further discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. You're on a roll.
All right.
6.4.
Point 4, this is acknowledging National School Lunch Week from October 9th through October 13th. The theme this year is School Lunch, Recipes for Success. And it's a week to reflect on all the good work our team does, all of our teams here at Poway Unified, in providing healthy school lunches to all of our students across the district.
All right, thank you. Any questions on this one? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second, without any comments about process meats.
On a motion by Dr. Patel, second by Mr. Zane. Any further discussion? I know that our student board member would like to put in her preferential vote on this item.
I would like to put in my preferential vote in favor of this item.
All right, thanks very much. And for everybody else, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, this passes unanimously with an additional yes vote from our student board member, Ms. Mistral.
Thank you.
6.5. It is very odd. The new setup feels odd to
It
me.
is
We're just going to
strange.
stick with you for the
Okay.
next while here.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
6.5 though.
Yeah,
You're on.
6.5, thank you. We're sharing the district's investment policy as we're required to do with respect to our CFDs. All community facility district funds are invested in very secure and liquid securities, as you know. All are FDIC insured, and we have additional agreements with our custodial institution to fully collateralize, getting late, our deposits, thereby providing insurance on 100% of the funds that we have on deposit. The district's CFD funds are managed by our trustee, Zions Bank, and attached is a report disclosing our investment balances by CFD and improvement areas.
So this is an information item only, no vote necessary, but if anyone has a question for Mr. Little, now's the time. All right, seeing none.
Thank you.
Take it to the next one, 6.6.
Thank you. Similarly, this is our pursuant to Government Code Section 5364. We're providing the quarterly disclosure for the district's other funds, other than CFDs. So district funds related to the general fund and the other funds that we looked at earlier are invested mostly in the San Diego County Treasurer as required by statute. And as you know, the county practices a very conservative investment strategy focusing on principal preservation. And attaches an accounting of the district funds invested in the county pool, as well as the SB accounts and our revolving cash that are at the banks.
All right, this also is an information item, but if anyone has a question. All right, seeing none, that brings us to the 4 items that were pulled from the consent calendar. I'll do the 3 pulled by Dr. Phelps first. Originally 5.2L, I believe, now 6.7. Let's go to that one. This is approval of resolution number 13-2018 entitled Authorizing Election under Public Contract Code Section 22030 to become subject to California Uniform Public Instruction Cost Accounting Act procedures, and authorization for superintendent or designee to execute same. Mr. Little.
Yes. So this resolution obviously puts people on notice that the district is opting in to CUPCA, and that we will follow the accounting procedures set forth in the Act and governed by the CUPCA Commission.
Is there Mr. Zhang?
I just thought we had talked earlier, and I just had a couple of comments about this item before getting to a motion and a vote. I was just initially concerned. I read the background materials, introduction to CUPCA, and it specifies that this program was created in 1983 to provide public agencies an option to take action toward utilizing higher bid limits and to enhance the agency's ability to perform the public works project with forced labor. And a summary of the effective bid limitations, at least one point anyway, is that public projects of $45,000 or less may be performed by the employees of a public agency by negotiated contract or by purchase order. My only concern with this, I believe in streamlining. I like the idea of making it easy for the administration to act quickly on infrastructure projects, but wanted to be sure that there was reference to there'll be a pre-qualification of contractors for those used in projects approved under CUPCA, that there is a way, an assured way of having what presumably would be non-union contractors compete and get the work for these jobs. And so I'm concerned. I'd like to see what are the qualifications, how are the qualifications arrived at, and perhaps put that out there as a condition for approval, or approve this subject to a listing or ratification of the qualifications for contractors to be used under this program.
Understood. So under CUPCA, we're required to have a pre-qualified pool of contractors. The commission sets the minimum criteria with respect to what the contractors have to get into the pool, but the district can set the criteria over and above that minimum. So work experience, litigation experience, claims experience, right, locality, et cetera, can all be part of the criteria matrix that we design as we ask contractors to submit to be pre-qualified. That's an annual cycle, so every year we go back out to contractors or to the public and say, this is November. We're looking at contractors to pre-qualify again. Send us your application. We develop a questionnaire with those criteria that we develop and ascertain are the most critical. And then by January, we're putting into effect the new list of pre-qualified vendors. So we could certainly bring back the list of sort of criteria that we use for our pre-qualification pool.
And you said the commission would set the minimum criteria,
Right.
that being the Personnel Commission?
No, that's the CUPCA commission.
CUPCA,
So
okay.
so now that we're into CUPCA, the commission overseeing who developed CUPCA and oversees it has created the minimal criteria of what contractors have to enter into public works contracts.
Who comprises the CUPCA commission?
I was going to ask the same. It's
That's
a state
good question. It's a state agency. I can get you more information, but it's a fairly large membership board.
You said now the board could add to
Right.
criteria, the minimum criteria.
Right.
Does the board have any discretion as to the minimum criteria established by CUPCA?
No.
Do we know if the minimum criteria established by CUPCA includes any provisions whereby, in the instance of a construction project, let's say, that only contractors that have gone through, say, a state-approved apprenticeship program are able to do work on those projects?
Yeah.
And the reason I ask is because state-approved apprenticeship programs are exclusively union.
Correct.
And I'd like to see that merit shop contractors have the ability to bid and compete on projects that are done by the district as well.
Sure. I don't recall that as being a provision in or out that I've seen as a minimal requirement. I don't know if Director Coster knows for sure either way. Yeah. And remember, the goal of that pool is to have as wide a pool as possible with the most diverse group of contractors to choose from that are qualified.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Mr. Little before we hear a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion for approval contingent upon a review of the qualifications established for the approval of the contractors, for the pool of contractors.
I'll second that, but I do have, okay, I'll second that. So on a motion by Mr. Zane, second by O'Connor Ratcliffe, I do want to clarify what you mean by that before we actually take the vote.
Well, practically speaking, Mr. Little, what would that look like if we were to approve contingent upon a review of the qualifications?
If we wanted to expedite the process, I'd recommend that we simply share with you our pre-qualification questionnaire form that we share with our contractors, and you can review it, and if you have any concerns, we can go from there.
So if there's substantial, we can bring it back if there's substantial concerns.
Sure,
essentially.
absolutely.
Okay.
So your motion then, it does not, which I seconded, benefit of the doubt, just remember that, it doesn't necessarily call for us to have a second vote on
Correct.
this.
That's
Only
correct.
that we will see it, and if we have concerns, we could bring it back for
Correct.
further discussion in another month. Okay,
Correct.
there was a motion and a second. So pretty much as written with the caveat that we'd like that the board will see and have a chance to give some informal feedback at minimum on the qualifications
for contractors.
Yes, so that is the motion. Do we have some more discussion? Turn on your mic.
So we're proving it as is with the option to bring it back?
Well, we're approving the resolution, but the resolution doesn't include what the qualifications are under CUPCA for the contractors. So if we have the opportunity to review those qualifications and there's nothing.
I guess is there a contingency or isn't there on this? Yeah. Contingency.
We're just asking, even directing Dr. Phelps and her staff to make sure to share that list with us so that we have the opportunity to bring it back. Is that accurate before I restate your motion incorrectly?
Well, I think the way we had discussed it was if there's some substantial objection with the qualifications that come forward, then someone could raise it and then it comes back. Absent that, it's good to go.
Okay.
Okay, I think I've got you.
Okay.
Do we understand the motion on the floor at this point? Do we want to discuss it at all? Okay, we're ready? All right.
I'm just going to point out one thing. In the resolution, it appears to be a duplicate. There's a whereas. I don't know if that's intentional. The last whereas is followed by a therefore be it resolved, and the two are the same.
Almost.
Oh.
Well, the board finds it in the second, in the be it resolved.
Right. Board, district, and which is the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One and the same.
I thought that was intentional for
Yeah,
emphasis.
so did I.
Maybe.
Okay, then, all in favor?
For emphasis.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that does pass with that
Thank you.
clear as mud caveat, right? Okay, great. Our next item was previously 5.2M, now known as 6.8. This is approval of resolution number 14-2018, entitled Delegation of Authority in Regard to Award of Public Works Contracts, Bidding and Management of Proposition and Other Capital Improvement Projects. Okay, that's a long one, too. Mr. Little.
Thank you. So this resolution delegates authority to the superintendent, the associate superintendent of business support services, and the director of facilities maintenance and operations to award public works contracts up to $175,000 and to manage the bidding process for the same.
Okay, questions on this item? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, on a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Ms. Beatty. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously as well. Item formerly known as 5.2N, now 6.9, approval of resolution number 15-2018 entitled Delegation of Authority to the Superintendent and/or Associate Superintendent Business Support Services to award emergency contracts. Mr. Little.
Thank you, Ms. President. So, as it states, this is delegating the authority for such, and the Public Contract Code identifies and defines an emergency as a sudden, unexpected occurrence that poses a clear and imminent danger requiring immediate action to prevent or mitigate the loss of impairment of life, health, property, or essential public services. So to that extent, this would delegate the authority to the superintendent and/or the associate superintendent of business to award emergency contracts therein.
I do have a quick question on this one. Currently, only the superintendent is authorized to do that?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're adding you on
Correct.
with this. Okay. Any questions on the item?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, on a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Dr. Patel. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous as well. And the last one in
Thank you.
6.10, formerly known as 5.2K, pulled by Ms. Mishra. This is reject a non-responsive bid from California Tree Service, Inc. for bid 2017-08B for tree removal service at Poway High School and award the contract to West Coast Arborists, Inc. This is Mr. Little's item, and if you'd like to introduce it, then I'll initially go to Ms. Mishra since she pulled it.
Sure. So this is obviously for the work at Poway High School with respect to the trees. We floated an RFP to 12 contractors. We had 5 contractors respond. The low bidder was non-responsive to the check provided, as bid security was not in the type form. So we are recommending and asking that the bid be awarded to West Coast Arborists, Inc., who is a local firm.
Ms. Mishra.
I just wanted to leave a public comment for this because I was contacted from several parents concerned about the trees during the summer. That I'm really glad that we're making progress on this matter and moving forward to making Poway High a safe place for everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, fantastic. And then with that, is there a motion? Oh, Dr. Patel?
Yeah, I did want to make a comment since I also wanted this pulled. I want to thank staff for getting this done. It's a lot more of a complicated process than it looks up front, and it looks like you did a thorough job with vetting all the bids properly, and I really appreciate that. I was equally contacted by several residents, and it was in the press, and thank you for doing this right.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. And with that, a motion to approve.
Second, to leave the property better than we found it.
Thank you.
Okay. On a motion by Dr. Patel and a really corny second by Mr. Zane, is there any further discussion on this matter? I, too, share the joy that the rest of the board members undoubtedly do that we're going to get this done now. Fantastic. All right. With that, then, seeing nothing else? Okay. All in favor? Aye. And I'm sorry, my fault. I should have gone to Ms. Mishra for her preferential vote.
And then I'd like to cast an aye for my preferred.
There is a shocker. Fantastic, though. All right, and now the rest of us, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous with our student preferential vote also an aye. Thank you. And that does take us to our 7.0s, learning support services. So our first one here is 7.1, ratification of stipulated agreement for student expulsion. Dr. Robertson.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we bring forward to the board one stipulated agreement for action.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
On a motion by Ms. Beatty, second by Mr. Zane. Is there any discussion of this item? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. 7.2, readmission of students on expulsion. Dr. Robertson.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we bring forward 3 readmits for the board's action.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by Dr. Patel, second by Mr. Zane. Any discussion on this item? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously as well. 7.3, public hearing and approval of resolution number 12-2018 entitled Sufficiency of Instructional Materials for 2017-2018. Shall I open the public hearing for us first, or would you like to take it to start it off, Dr. Robertson?
I think I'd like to just take it and introduce it.
Okay.
So each year we bring forward as a public hearing a resolution for sufficiency of instructional materials for the school year. I'd like to note that instructional materials also include teachers that are working at school sites that develop standards-aligned instructional materials for the students too. With this, we ensure students have access at both home and school as needed for the lessons, and that our instructional materials are aligned in the main core subject areas of math, English, social science, and science. In addition, in our resolution, we have included LOT, which is language other than English, and health. And just to remind everyone, mainly our recent adoptions that include all our mathematics, health, we have ELD, early literacy, and we're currently working on science. And we're going to start deepening our understanding in the ACTFL standards, which are the American Council on Teaching Foreign Language, and also social studies, because all of these have been coming on board. So with that, Madam President, if you can open the hearing, that'd be great.
All right, so before we get to do anything, I will open our public hearing on this item at 8:45. If you have not yet turned in a public comment card, you can do it as you're walking forward right now. And seeing no interest from the public in commenting on this, I'm going to close the public hearing on this item at 8:45. And with that, I'll turn it over to the board. Any questions from the board on this matter?
Dr. Robertson, just a quick question for clarification. Has the sufficiency, the resolution concerning sufficiency always included instructional personnel in addition to textbooks, or is...
It does include instructional materials. So if you go online, you read the ed code, there's actually an ed code that says the materials are things that are designed for students that you can actually print.
Teachers.
And
it includes teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess my question is, so this is obviously obligated by the Education Code, and it says the governing board, should hold this public hearing to encourage participation by parents, teachers, members of the staff, in order for the board to make a determination about the sufficiency of the materials. And so in order for the board to make an informed decision, is it possible to have, some information that, some due diligence has been done to ascertain whether or not there are adequate materials in the 4 curriculum areas, plus the foreign languages and the lab equipment in science?
Yeah, so the one thing I just want to remind us is that we have new standards that are coming forward, and so we're starting that work, and we're going to be recommending materials in all of those areas. We currently have textbooks and materials sitting at our schools. What we can do is the adoptions that we've currently done with our new standards, we can pull up all those numbers, Again, what we would do is we'd have to go to all of our schools and look at the instructional materials and all the stuff that they have developed. I will tell you that anytime our teachers are asking us for alignment or lab equipment or anything, we are responsive to that, and we do bring them together as we are with our foreign language teachers that had come forward before.
Or I wonder if there's a way, say a simple way to ask the school sites, say the principals, to say, ask their teacher, some kind of sort of stamp of, yes,
Okay.
we've done a cursory review and the materials are adequate.
So
So
we
for instance, I
can-
sort of
Mhm.
did my own, just reached out to a handful of teachers just to get an idea and to encourage that participation, and the feedback was, for the most part, positive. But
Sure, we'll put together some kind of a
feedback
process
or
and we'll
something.
provide a report for you. And so
Yeah,
we
the-
will sample all the schools and look at our instructional materials K-12.
I don't want to create burdensome work, but just something to say we've done a cursory review, and the board is confident
Okay.
that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Zane.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Okay, on a motion by Mr. Zane, second by Mr. Sellers. Any further discussion then? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. 7.4 is approval of resolution number 11-2018 entitled Character Counts and Red Ribbon Week for Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs Prevention. I'm not sure I really got the spirit of that exclamation point there, but Dr. Robertson.
We heard it. Thank you, Madam President. Tonight we bring forward for your action a resolution to proclaim October 16th through 20th as Character Counts and Red Ribbon Week. All our schools participate in lots of their own activities to note the important message of supporting a healthy and responsible lifestyle. We ask for your action on this resolution.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Aye
Ms.
goes
Beatty, Ms.
to
Beatty.
Ms. Beatty. Okay. On a motion by Dr. Patel, second by Ms. Beatty. Is there any discussion of this? Okay. Yes.
Only comment I have is I think the exclamation point is a trademark issue.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh.
I suspect, yeah.
So I'm not required to say it with enthusiasm? Okay. Okay, so before I go to the vote of the rest of us, our student members' preferential vote, Ms. Mishra.
I would also like to cast my preferential vote in favor of this item.
Fantastic. And for everyone else, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is 6-0, unanimous vote on that one. Thank you, everyone. This takes us to our personnel support services items. We'll go to Mr. Jimenez for 8.1, Governing Board appointee to the Personnel Commission.
Thank you, Madam President. Our Personnel Commission is comprised of 3 members. The term of the Governing Board's appointee will expire on December 1st, 2017. Under California Ed Code, it requires that the Governing Board publicly announce their intended nominee or appointee no later than September 30th. As Dr. Phelps mentioned earlier, our Board Policy 4.30, as it applies to the Personnel Commission, was presented under consent and was an exception as a request for the Board of Trustees to approve that policy under its first review solely due to the fact that we have the timeline to announce your intended nominee before September 30th. The next step in this process after you announce the appointee would be to hold an open hearing at the next public board meeting to give the opportunity for the public or employees to express their views on the qualifications and experience of the intended nominee. Currently, Ms. Margaret Wyatt is the current appointee of the board, and she has expressed interest in serving another term and meets the eligibility requirements. The board is respectfully asked to either recommend the reappointment of Ms. Margaret Wyatt or to direct staff to follow procedures to post a vacancy and solicit applications this evening.
And at this time, we can take a motion and have some discussion, or we can reverse that if we'd like to do it that way. Mr. Sellers.
I move that we, see if I can word this properly, I move that we approve the naming of Ms. Wyatt as the district's intended appointee to the Personnel Commission.
Second.
All right, that's a motion by Mr. Sellers and a second by Mr. Zane to announce the intended reappointment of Margaret Wyatt as our appointee to the Personnel Commission. Any discussion on this item? I just want to note that I have talked to quite a few people already and rave reviews, and that it seems that we have a good appointee in place, and I'm going to support this one going forward. So any further discussion? Mr. Sellers?
The only other comment is I want to eat a little crow here, in that when we implemented this 3 years ago, you strongly suggested to the author of the board policy that we include a provision potentially allowing for reappointment, and the author vociferously disagreed, and the author has now changed his tune and admits that you were right.
Wow. All right. I'm gonna take that gracefully. Thank you. All right then. And with that, is there? Oh, we have the motion and the second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. I want to make sure I got a vote down there. If there's a spill, I think so. Okay, we got it. Okay, that is unanimous. Congratulations. You are our appointee for moving forward for the public hearing next month. So thanks for being here and waiting around for us. All right, that takes us to 8.2. Maintain the district's current carrier, Aetna, for 2018 coverage. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Madam President. We'd like to update you on the process and the recommendation for our health and welfare benefits carrier for the upcoming 2017-18 school year. In April 2017, our benefits broker, Marsh McLennan Agency, formerly Barney & Barney, issued an RFP on behalf of the district to solicit proposals on our health and welfare benefits for medical, dental, vision, and prescription drug coverage for our employees. The initial proposals were received by 3 firms, which included Aetna, Anthem, and VIBA. These were reviewed by our district insurance committee. This insurance committee is comprised of representatives from our employee associations, as well as management and staff that are involved with the administration of our benefits program. The benefits committee reviewed those proposals, and feedback was to request a final and best proposal. Those final rates were submitted to our insurance committee on August 30th, 2017. The consensus from the committee was to recommend to our Superintendent Phelps to maintain the district's current carrier, Aetna, for 2018 coverage. Several factors were considered throughout these discussions, including the proposed pricing and premiums, the program design such as copay and mental health coverage, benefits, the prescription and drug coverage, and any potential disruption to current employees' coverages. Our open enrollment is scheduled to begin approximately November 1st, 2017, which is right around the corner as well. The renewals included the following. Aetna renewals through Aetna Value Network, Full Network, and Aetna PPO plans was a reduction of 5% versus current premiums. Our Kaiser renewals, which we see across Southern California, was an increase. However, our brokers were able to negotiate a reduction from a 15% increase for our Kaiser renewals down to 12.01%, although it's still a significant increase. Our self-funded prescription drug coverage program was a recommendation for a reduction of 6.7% in current premiums, and our dental and life insurance for the most part remained the same. Vision was a slight percentage increase in the amount of 3.7%. However, based on the current participation levels of our employees, meaning the plans that they selected, and the rate decreases or increases in the case of Kaiser, the year-to-year cost to the district for all benefits combined will remain relatively flat. It's also important to note that the insurance committee also recommended that early in the new calendar year of 2018 that we continue to work with our new insurance brokers to continue to have conversations regarding VIBA's coverage and research other types of program design changes, and as well to solicit our employees for feedback and interest in terms of their most important priorities in terms of their benefits program. So the insurance committee will be taking all this information into consideration over the next year as we approach that timeline once again to make any decisions on changes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jimenez. This is an information item only, so if anyone has questions. All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And we have nothing under technology and innovation or superintendent. That takes us to 11.1. These are our board member reports, and I'd like to start with Ms. Mishra.
Alrighty.
Who I keep pronouncing Mishra. I'm going to get it right.
Okay.
I'm going to try.
I'm fine with
Please
either.
forgive me with that.
Mishra. Both work.
Okay. Good evening. As we kick off this school year, the class of 2021 begin their adventure into high school and all of the firsts that come with it, whereas the class of 2018 begin the first of our many lasts. In the previous month, I've had the opportunity to meet with the other students in the North County Associated Student Body Conference, and it was extremely inspiring to see all the innovative ideas that the schools have planned for their students. I'm certain that we will make this year an extremely memorable one. Last weekend, all 5 of the PUSD high school's bands put on excellent performances at the prestigious Poway Days Parade. As always, all of the Poway schools put on wonderful back-to-school nights, and we're looking forward to seeing the exciting things they're going to do this year. One goal that my school's principal, Mr. Dave LeMaster, has been promoting at Rancho Bernardo is the RB experience. Similarly, I would like to increase the Poway School District experience. How can we improve the learning environment for our students? What can we do to keep their parents more informed? This year, I would like to hear our student voices and attempt to work towards their goal that they would like to see happen. As a voice for students, it is my responsibility to work alongside them to improve our lives and the ones who come after us. In the following week, Dr. Kim Phelps and I will be meeting at the 2017-2018 Superintendent's Student Advisory Committee, and I'm excited to hear about how the students wish to improve their communities and what I can do to work with them and meet our common goals. Finally, I would like to wish everyone a wonderful 2017-2018 school year. Thank you.
No report.
So 2 events that I wanted to stand out in the last month that I wanted to share with the rest of the board. One, my son and I took this required class, Smart Start, put on by the CHP, which Poway Unified requires for high schoolers as a prerequisite to getting their parking pass. And truth be told, I was prepared for a boring 2 hours, and it was anything but. It was really very engaging, gripping, informative, humorous, all of the above. It was just, and I learned, as a driver of many years, I learned some new things, and it was a very worthwhile program. So I'm really pleased that Poway Unified provides this for our students, makes it mandatory for the students who have, who want to have a parking space. And, I would encourage us anyone to attend if they're so able, and if we can bring this program in to, for other reasons in addition, for all of our teenagers in high school to be able to attend this, and as well as the parents. It's a really great program, and it's put on by the CHP and an officer who obviously knows the streets and the highways like the back of his hand. And and the other event seems like a distant memory, but I think it was just yesterday. The Google Road Show at D39. So I wanted to make everyone jealous with all my swag from but also wanted to share a little bit. Although it's a biohazard bag, there's some candy Legos in there if anybody needs a little sugar to stay awake. And some test tube. Here, got some test tube Skittles. So, but seriously, it was a thank you to our new Associate Superintendent, Jennifer Burke, for putting this on. It was very interesting. They had 2 different seminars. One was the Google 101. The other was blended learning. It was the blended learning. And so I sat in on one of the seminars, and I think what I found most interesting was when we went to the small group discussion with, I've got my back to you guys, and I apologize for that. We, Thanks. I'll remember that. Sexual harassment. We at certain times we would have with the teachers the small group discussion, and the teachers would share, how they do blended learning and incorporate the technology, and they were rattling off names of different kinds of software that they used, and they integrated into their curriculum. And one teacher from Mesa Verde who teaches humanities was talking about creating these sort of digital animated choreographed poetry productions that the kids would put together, and just hearing about all the different things, the resources that they were using was really interesting. And then they had the STEM playground, and there you had some vendors, and I can just pass this along if anybody wants to take a look at some of the magazines and the noise, reduction headphones and candy. So they had booths set up, and some of them were from vendors. But what I thought was really cool was our own. We've got so many resources in house, and what I learned. I've always known our CTE program has really been great, and it's been getting better with the grants that they've gotten and the programs that they're introducing. But they actually provide these mobile labs. And I remember when my kids were in elementary school, and we'd have to pay some big bucks for some outside vendor to come in. We called them the mobile labs because they would bring it, it's like the field trip at school, and they would bring the science project to the school. Our CTE Career Technical Education Department is actually providing this service to our classrooms, and it could be a day or a week lesson plan, and that was really interesting. So, and I did have an opportunity to speak with our Associate Superintendent of Ed Tech about the new coaching that's going to be implemented through Teaching and Learning Cooperative with our teachers to help and support them in the classroom to implement this engaging digital learning, and then also have the coaching and the resources to continue to support them in the classroom as they actually utilize this in a practical way. So it's really exciting work, and I was really glad that I attended. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the great dessert station. Wow, it was all science-based. So they had molecules made out of Rice Krispie treats. They had cookies with the frosting, with all the periodic tables. And then, of course, they had the Pop Rocks little candy drops. And that was really neat. And I did pick up a card of the lady who made all of those. And lastly, I can't remember her name, but happy birthday to your 13-year-old daughter.
Was that swag bag worth more than $50?
Oh. Okay, well, that's a tough act to follow, but considering I was in biotech, that biohazard bag just scares me. Anyway, good evening, and thank you, everyone, for staying till the bitter end. It's nice to know that people are still willing to stay. Some of you may be required to. It's maybe I think I see 2 people here. It's not part of their job. It's been a busy start to the school year, and this is my first year that I've been a board member at the beginning of a school year. So I was very excited to attend part of the APSA meeting, as well as the new teacher orientation just prior to school starting. It was wonderful seeing the administrators and management dancing in the back to school video. That was pretty cool. You guys know how to have a good time. And it was also very inspirational to see everyone getting into it. I was also impressed with the sheer number of new teachers we brought in this year. That's a good sign for us. That means we're expanding and growing, and that's promising for our children going forward. And I look forward to hearing about their progress as they get more part of Team PUSD. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that through the years. I was able to attend a couple of back-to-school nights. Admittedly, they were for my own children. But it was also an opportunity to be on school sites, meet new teachers that we haven't had previously, participate in PTA meetings, as well as just get to know those school sites a little bit better. It was certainly a pleasure riding the fire truck in the Poway Days Parade. Michelle O'Connor-Ratcliffe was there with me, as well as our teachers and classified employees of the year. It goes without saying that all the cheering was probably for the employees and classified staff
That's
of
why
the
we
year.
make them come with us, so we don't
Yeah.
get booed.
We didn't get booed. I saw several faces that I recognized, and it was nice. And I'm certainly excited to support them further at Saturday evening's Salute to Teachers ceremony. And once again, like Ms. Mishra said over there, I'm excited to seeing how the school year goes, and good luck to everyone. Thank you.
I will only say, and very briefly, congratulations, kudos, great work to all of the classified and certificated staff to kick off the new school year. My wife and I are exhausted. We are the proud parents of 2 Sunset Hill Seagulls, and now proud parents of a Mount Carmel Sun Devil. So it's been a busy few weeks for us, getting into the groove of things. But other than that, no further report. Thank you.
I want to echo some of the things Dr. Patel said. First day of school preparations were a joy to participate in. That APSM breakfast, a new teacher orientation, back to school nights. Quick shout out too to ESS, transportation, and our youth in transition programs for everything they've done during back to school time to really meet the needs of our district families. I referred a few people to them at the beginning. They work really hard. They were really responsive. I just want to thank everybody who's associated with any of those groups, and I know everybody worked really hard, but those are the ones I know had to respond to things that I was shooting at them. So thank you very much. I do want to talk a little bit, because I feel like I left it hanging a little bit. I want to talk about the FCMAT Special Education Program Review for a minute here. It has some really wonderful recommendations in it. I'm really excited to see them implemented in a thoughtful and collaborative way. I think we have a chance to do that much more smoothly with, I have been disappointed, though, in one narrative that keeps appearing, and that's the view that this report is solely a fiscal review, and I'm mostly talking to the board members here at this time, but that it's solely fiscal, intended to help us cut costs. And I just want to emphasize that from my perspective, that's only really one part of the report, and only relevant to me, I think, after we implement the other recommendations that are meant to increase and improve appropriate services for our students in special education. So once that begins to happen, the recommendations about greater efficiencies in program delivery might be achieved without the need to go looking for cuts. We may find those efficiencies, and with those changes find that certain cuts are unnecessary or actually antithetical to the program we're creating going forward. We know that our combined state and federal financial support for special education is in every possible way totally, completely insufficient. We know we have to supplement the program with other state and our local funds. Federal law requires us to spend the same amount of those funds, those state and local funds, on special education services every year. So we can't even legally cut that budget absent a change in a decrease in the enrollment of students in those programs. So I just want us to be cognizant of that. Our FCMAT report also clearly states that our district's expenditures right now are exactly in alignment with the state average expenditures in special ed. So to me, this means there's no need to reduce the special education portion of our budget. Now, if we're reducing the whole budget and we know that we need to do that, I'm fine. We need to do that everywhere, and special education doesn't need to be left out. But I think the report clearly said they're receiving the right allotment of our current budget. So we should absolutely be shifting our existing resources around to better meet our special education program goals and the needs of our students, absolutely. But we shouldn't be cutting the percentage. That would put us below the state average, and to me that means we're not doing it right anymore. I want to touch on that phrase too for a second from the report, the statewide average. Spending the statewide average is a really nice benchmark, I think, for us. It means we're on the right track, we're on target. But having average educational results to go with that, totally unacceptable. Poway Unified has never and will never be average. We strive for excellence in everything, and to me that includes special education. We need to get it right. So back to where I started. I'm excited to learn that we're moving forward to develop a collaborative plan now, and I know that's in Dr. Robertson's department in LSS, but it touches a lot of departments at this point. But that collaborative plan to implement our FCMAT recommendations is exciting, and I'm anxious to make sure that we can ensure as a board that interested staff and parents are able to provide input. That's absolutely critical, I think. Several of the recommendations are going to require really big shifts in our current practice, I think, to get it done. We need buy-in. We need to make sure nothing comes as a surprise. Perhaps our first step maybe should be to look to experts in the field of special education for assistance on this. We don't have to, and we probably shouldn't be trying to do this in a vacuum, in the Poway Unified vacuum, without looking out to experts. We have these experts locally right here, San Diego State University and Cal State San Marcos. There are experts who have spent years studying this, writing dissertations, publishing work. They have proven models showing other districts how to do exactly what we want to do here. So there's no need to start from scratch. We should acknowledge that expertise, reach out to them, be grateful that they're so close and accessible for us. Use them. I've been talking a while here, but I just kind of want to wrap this up, make it a little bit real. We have some things that are working really well here in our districts, and they're not necessarily uniform across sites, but those models that are working at different sites do need to be considered. My recent visits to Del Norte have been with the express intention on my part of learning more about how least restricted environment works there. That was one of the big things that came out of the FCMAT report. We need to do better on that. We have a teacher expert in special education. Our National Teacher of the Year is a special education teacher, Megan Gross, over at Del Norte. We need to talk to her. Talking to her, I could have written a book of notes just on what she was saying in the brief meeting I had with her. She arranged for me to see some of those LRE, least restrictive environment innovations going on at Del Norte. And with Principal Maisel as a guide, I was able to witness a lot of their, full inclusion of some really high needs, non-diploma bound students there. Full inclusion in a computer science class, actually with our district, one of our district teacher of the year. Biology and art, totally mainstreamed. They have an aide in there, but the teachers have the full buy-in. They want those kids in their classroom. They can do it, they know they can, and they're making it happen. Additionally, I saw a couple examples that were totally new to me. The concept of co-teaching in American literature and physics, and our little tour group ended up discussing how that co-teaching push-in model this was for resource students, so not the super high needs special education students, but still special education, IEP students. That co-teaching push-in model helps those resource students it helps them be successful in that LRE model, and they get to earn an A through G credit in that way, because when they get a pull-out resource class, they get credit for the class, but it's not A through G. So we can improve our A through G with this kind of a model. It was just, I loved what I saw. Mr. Maisel posted some silly pictures of me just grinning ear to ear, but I was thrilled with what I saw, and I know that all of our schools probably have something that we can take from what they're doing and share around and make it part of this plan. So the bottom line, we're doing some things really well already, but developing this comprehensive plan can help put it together district-wide so all our sites can do it. I have some really high hopes. I can't wait. I'll turn this way now because I know you guys are going to be in the nitty-gritty of this. We can do it. We can do it together. We can do it well, and I hope the board is going to be watching it as closely as I know I am personally. So high hopes. We're going to do it. I'm done. Thanks. That concludes all of our board member reports, and now I'll take it to Dr. Phelps for your superintendent report.
Okay, what a wonderful opportunity tonight to recognize our Teachers of the Year, our classified Employees of the Year, and our Volunteers of the Year, and I'd like to congratulate them once again and thank them for their passion and dedication in serving all of our schools and our students. And And the first few weeks of school has been quite a whirlwind. It's been really, really extremely busy for myself and our staff. I just want to commend our entire team PUSD for such a smooth start opening to school. I had the opportunity to already visit many of our campuses since the first day of school and was very impressed on how hard our teachers and our staff and our principals and parent volunteers all worked to prepare the opening of school. I want to congratulate each one of you and thank you for a job well done. I also have been enjoying attending various staff meetings to welcome our teachers and classified staff to opening a great new school year. I've been able to field questions, address concerns, and share a little bit about myself as well as the vision moving forward. My hope is that I think I'll have them all done. I'll visit every staff meeting by the end of October. So pretty good, right? Tonight, the board heard information on the internal controls assessment conducted by Moss Adams. The district is already working on the report's recommendations and is committed to decrease our fiscal and operational risks, including vacation accrual, while strengthening internal policies and procedures. I look forward to updating the board on how our staff is continuing to address any deficiencies and the recommendations that were identified in the report. I'd like to also thank Jennifer and the IT staff and for putting on this fabulous event. As Ms. Beatty had expressed, the Google Roadshow was a wonderful event that we had over 150 teachers attend. And multiple vendors who also donated a lot of really great raffle prizes. And as she mentioned, there was some really great, really cute STEM desserts there. I'd also like to share out with you is that as we move forward as a district, as you know, communication is vital, and having a strong communications department is vital. And Ms. Peck has worked very, very hard to stay in front of a lot of the news happenings since school has opened, and collaboratively we have created a communication plan for us to move forward, and it identifies different action steps of what we would like to do moving forward in a positive direction for the district, and making sure that the district's highlights and positive messages also get out. And that plan will be uploaded to the website as well. We will all be attending the Salute to Teachers, or most of us will be attending the Salute to Teachers on Saturday, and I look forward to spending that evening with all of you. And I know that my daughter is right now up and watching this board meeting, and I like to say you need to go to bed, and as do the rest of us. So I'm sorry I missed your back to school night tonight, but we had a wonderful board meeting, and I'd like to thank all of you who stayed till 9:20 this evening to be a partake in this great event. But thank you, and have a good evening.
All right, great event might be overstated, but the next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held Thursday, October 12th, 2017, 6 p.m. right here, and we are adjourned at 9:19.